Chapter 772. To be able to talk about such a heavenly Tao phenomenon, could it be that this person is an immortal? Another immortal has come to Firmament Star? No, there's no chi refinement aura on him at all. He can't be an immortal. Besides, he's from the Divine Thought tribe. How could he suddenly become an immortal? It's impossible. Then how do we explain this transformation? That's right. As far as I know, only that immortal can cause such a phenomenon during a Daoist lecture. How did he do it? How could there be such a guy in the human race? Is he really a human? The over-gods gathered in the godly mountain. They were all discussing Chu Kuangren. The heavenly Tao transformation had completely shattered their understanding of the world. From what they could remember, the last time the heavenly Tao caused such a huge commotion was during an immortal's Daoist lecture in the previous era. That immortal had left an indelible impression on them. Immortals are too terrifying. Just one attack was enough to put a heavenly master into a deep slumber. If Tsang really is an immortal, then we mustn't provoke him anymore. The underworld god took a deep breath and said. The frost over god could not help but shudder. After all, he had planted the frost mark on Tsang back then, causing him to suffer from frost chi corrosion. Now that Tsang was so powerful, what should he do if he came to seek revenge? That's not right. If Tsang really is an immortal, why would I plant the frost mark on him back then? The frost over god frowned and said. The over gods were also confused. Alright, before the heavenly master awakens, let's ignore Tsang for now. Let's focus on observation and find out more about him. A over-god in a silver-white robe said. Hearing his words, everyone nodded slightly. The temporal over-god is right. Let's do as you say. Alright, let's not touch him for now. The temporal over-god was a powerhouse among the 33 over-gods, second only to the heavenly master. When the heavenly master was not around, he would be the leader of the over-gods. On the other side, in the Jianghu tribe, Chu Kuangren was almost done with his Daoist sermon. Down below, the countless cultivators of the Jianghu tribe were listening in fascination. Even further away, in the mountains, there were also many cultivators listening to him. Some of them had already entered a state of enlightenment. After the lecture ended, everyone seemed as if they wished to continue. They stared at Chu Kuangren helplessly. Don't stop, continue. The more the merrier. We can still listen. The corner of Chu Kuangren's mouth twitched. He had been preaching for a full 3 days this time. Although he had taken the fasting pill beforehand, he could not help but feel thirsty. His body could not take it anymore. Sure enough, this ordinary body was not a good feeling to use. It seemed that he had to find a way to strengthen his physical fitness. It was impossible to cultivate. In any case, after returning to the future, his cultivation would recover. In this era, he planned to focus on improving his soul power. Let's refine some body-strengthening pills. Chu Kuangren thought to himself. This lecture ends here, Yi Zichen said. Chu Kuangren said indifferently. The lecture ended, and the various phenomena of the heaven Tao dissipated. Everyone sighed, and they could not help but feel a sense of loss. They really hoped that Chu Kuangren could continue. His chi refinement experience was too much of a help to them. If the Immortal's Daoist preaching in the past opened up their macro understanding of cultivation and gave them a general direction for cultivation, then, Chu Kuangren's Daoist preaching complemented and perfected many minor details of cultivation. Both were equally important. We thank Lord Tsang. The cultivators of the Jianghu tribe got up one after another and bowed to Chu Kuangren, their faces filled with deep gratitude. Hearing the Tao in the morning, one can die without regrets. Chu Kuangren's Daoist preaching this time was too much of a help to them. In the distance, the cultivators in the mountains also bowed respectfully to Chu Kuangren and then left. After this lecture, Chu Kuangren's prestige in the Jianghu tribe greatly increased. Countless cultivators regarded him as a teacher. Even the respect of the Yinwu tribe towards Chu Kuangren increased day by day. Even some deity believers gradually entered the ranks of cultivators, and they no longer blindly worshipped the deities as before. Time flew by, and several months had passed. In these few months, in addition to guiding the cultivators in the Yinwu tribe in cultivation, Chu Kuangren also slowly passed on auxiliary skills such as alchemy and equipment refinement, setting off a cultivation revolution. Alchemists, equipment refiners, and so on correspondingly appeared. Chu Kuangren's actions also allowed the Yinwu tribe to continue to grow, earning him a good reputation as a sage. Yinwu tribe. Inside a room. Chu Kuangren took out a pill and swallowed it. The pill turned into a warm current that swept through his body as soon as it entered his stomach, constantly strengthening his physical body so that it was no longer as weak as before. At this time, Chu Kuangren was no longer as sickly as he looked a few months ago. He was full of youthful energy and handsome. A very energetic young man. In addition, his prestige in the Yinwu tribe had been increasing these days, and many young girls in the tribe had fallen in love with him. This made Chu Kuangren a little emotional. I've changed my face, but I'm still so popular. Sure enough, it's all because of my personal charm. However, he still missed his original appearance. If he maxed out his personal charm and appearance, that would be his true self. Although his current body was not bad looking, it was still not handsome enough compared to his original appearance. Brother Tsang, someone is here to see you. At that moment, Yinwu's emperor's thought came. Got it. Chu Kuangren replied with his emperor's thought. He then went to the great hall. Here, an old man was talking to Yinwu. Upon seeing Chu Kuangren, the old man immediately stood up and walked towards him. He said respectfully, "Greetings, Tsang sage. I'm Fenrir." The current Chu Kuangren was known as a sage. After that sermon, when the human cultivators mentioned him, they would all call him a sage to show their respect. Brother Fenrir, you're welcome. Chu Kuangren glanced at Fenrir and could tell that his cultivation level was much higher than Yinwu's. He was an upper heavenly honorable. It was his first time seeing an upper heavenly honorable cultivator in this era. Tsang Xian, I came here mainly for these two items. Fenrir took out a pill and a sword. Oh, is there a problem with these things? Chu Kuangren asked curiously. Seeing his calm expression, Fenrir could not help but take a deep breath and said solemnly, these two things were passed down from the Yinwu tribe. I heard that they were invented by Tsang sage. Yes, the pill is a qi refining pill that can increase a cultivator's cultivation efficiency. The sword is a magic weapon that can increase the cultivator's power through nurturing. Is there a problem? Chu Kuangren smiled. There's a big problem. Upon hearing Chu Kuangren's explanation, Fenrir's breathing gradually quickened. If these two things can be mass-produced, it'll be a great help to the human cultivators. Chapter 773. Equipment Refinement, Alchemy. In this era where most cultivators only knew how to do qi refinement, it was definitely an epoch-making cultivation technique. Hence, when Wind Valley saw things like medicinal pills and magical weapons, he was so shocked that it almost shattered his worldview. Now, the inventor, Chu Kuangren, was standing in front of him. Not only that, but he also acted as if he was unfazed, as if he was making a big fuss out of nothing. Wind Valley could not help but feel a little emotional. Chu Kuangren was too extraordinary. Every time he talked about Taoism, it would be like a deluge of heavenly flowers and heavenly transformations. Now that he had casually come up with two new things, it was enough to shock the human cultivators. Is this a sage? He really is from a different dimension than us. Tsang Xian, I'd like to ask if these two things can be mass-produced? Wind Valley asked expectantly. Of course. That's great. Wind Valley was extremely excited when they got the answer they were waiting for. It's just that I can't produce too many by myself. I'm currently teaching the people of the Jianghu tribe how to refine medicinal pills and equipment. Once they grow up, they can use medicinal pills and magical weapons on the entire human race. Chu Kuangren laughed. Wind Valley was shocked to hear that. Zhang Xian, what did you say? You plan to teach this technique to others? And it was not just one or two people. It was the entire Jianghu tribe? My abilities alone are limited, I can't refine many medicinal pills and magical weapons. Only with everyone's help can this technique be brought to life. Chu Kuangren said matter-of-factly. Both Wind Valley and Jianghu were instantly filled with respect. After all, Chu Kuangren's equipment and alchemy techniques could be said to be one of a kind in this era. As long as he was willing, with these two techniques, he could easily obtain wealth, status, and power. However, he was willing to spread this technique and share it with everyone else for the sake of the entire human race. With such breadth of mind, he truly deserved the title of sage. In Wind Valley, Jianghu's respect and admiration for Chu Kuangren was like a torrential river that flowed endlessly. Zhang Xian said that his abilities are limited, but from what I can see, Zhang Xian is turning his limited abilities into infinite possibilities. The human race has Zhang Xian, the heavens bless the human race. Wind Valley said emotionally. Beside him, Jianghu continuously nodded in agreement. I have seen many people in my life, but most of them are selfish. There are very few who are as selfless as Zhang Xian, who thinks for the human race wholeheartedly. If the human race had more people like Zhang Xian, there would be no need to worry about the human race not prospering, and there would be no need to fear the gods. That's right. Sage Zhang's contribution is worthy of the heavenly Tao's testimony. It should be recorded in the annals of human history and praised by future generations. Chu Kuangren felt a little embarrassed when he heard the flattery from both of them. Alchemy and equipment refinement were all things that he had learned in the future. Even without him, the human race would have invented these things sooner or later. You two are being too serious. As a fellow human, this is merely something that I should do. Chu Kuangren hurriedly stopped the two of them from flattering him. If they continued to flatter him like that, he would feel like he was floating. Sage Zhang is indeed a sage. Even after achieving such a feat, he is still so humble. How rare, how rare. I'm convinced. If it was someone else, they would have long been arrogant to the extreme. The heart of a sage is indeed different from that of ordinary people. Chu Kuangren was speechless. Fine, I might as well not say it. On the other hand, Qing Yi could not help but show a hint of admiration in his eyes when he saw how Fenrir and Jianghu were flattering Chu Kuangren. These two are really right. Young master is indeed such a person. After that, Fenrir and Chu Kuangren continued to chat about alchemy and equipment refinement. When he found out that there were different grades of medicinal pills and equipment, and that the medicinal pills and equipment he brought were only of the normal grade, he was extremely shocked. He realized that he had still underestimated the potential of medicinal pills and equipment. If these two items are developed, it will definitely be able to greatly advance the human race's cultivation progress. It will be a great achievement for all eternity. In Fenrir, Jianghu looked at Chu Kuangren with a fiery gaze. The admiration in his eyes were almost gushing out. Chu Kuangren sighed. These two are going to praise me again. Forget it. Come on, praise me hard. I can handle it. However, after a while, he still did not hear anything from the two of them. Chu Kuangren was a little surprised. Why aren't they praising me this time? Sigh. Fenrir suddenly sighed. Brother Fenrir, why are you sighing? Chu Kuangren could not help but wonder. If they were not going to praise him, then so be it. Why were they sighing? Were they going to scold him? That would be too much. I'm sighing. Why didn't I study hard back then? Now, I can't think of the right words to express Zhang Xianxian's achievements. Fenrir sighed. Beside him, Yinwu shook his head and said, "Words are no longer enough to describe Zhang Xingxian's great achievements for the human race." Chu Kuangren was speechless. Chu Kuangren was speechless. He did not know what else to say, so he could only go with the flow. Not long after, Fenrir left the Yinwu tribe. He said that he would find some people to learn alchemy and equipment refinement in a few days. Chu Kuangren did not reject him. Yinwu did not reject him either. Fenrir's identity was not simple. He was one of the strong people behind the human race, so he could not reject him even if he wanted to. After Fenrir left the Yinwu tribe, he came to a dark valley. At the end of the valley stood a towering pavilion. A letter, to the reverse god pavilion. He walked into the pavilion, and candles were lit up in the dark against the god pavilion, illuminating a dozen silhouettes. "Fenrir, did you see Tsang during your trip to the Yinwu tribe?" An indifferent voice was heard. "I did." "Oh, what do you think of him?" "This person truly lives up to his name as a sage. In fact, if I may say something disrespectful, I think this person is more outstanding than any sage in history," Fenrir said solemnly. The people in the reverse god pavilion could not help but be shocked at his words. "You have such an evaluation of him?" "No, this is not my evaluation. This should be the evaluation of the future generations. In this era, no one has the right to evaluate him." The crowd could not help but fall silent for a while. "Fenrir, don't you think you're exaggerating?" "Not at all." After that, Fenrir took out some medicinal pills and magic weapons and recounted his meeting with Chu Kuangren. After listening, the crowd once again fell into silence. After a while, a voice was heard. "Sage Tsang, what a great person. If what Fenrir said is true, then his generosity and achievements are indeed worthy to be recorded in the annals of history and be remembered by the future generations. These magic weapons and medicinal pills are of great help to human cultivators. What kind of genius is this? How deep must his understanding of cultivation be to be able to create such a technique? I heard that when this person was preaching, a phenomenon that only happens when immortals preach about Taoism appeared. I didn't believe it at first, but now I'm convinced. I must be on good terms with this person. This Tsang is of great importance to the human race. We must pay close attention to this person. If he needs any help, try your best to satisfy him." After hearing Fenrir's story, the human cultivators of the reverse god pavilion came to a consensus that they must be on good terms with Chu Kuangren. Chapter 774. Congratulations, host. You have obtained the God Tier 9 Transformations Tri-Elemental Soul Refinement Technique. On this day, Chu Kuangren had just finished drawing his rewards. The cultivation technique that he obtained caused him to reveal an expression of surprise. It was another God Tier cultivation technique. This was his second time obtaining a God Tier technique. The last time he obtained it was the Immortal Stellar Physique. The soul refinement technique sounded like a technique related to the soul. Chu Kuangren's eyes lit up. He had been wanting to focus on cultivating the soul, and it just so happened that he had obtained a God-tier technique related to the soul. That was great. Chu Kuangren could not wait to retrieve the technique. Suddenly, a large amount of mysteries surfaced in his mind. After a while, he had completely absorbed the God-tier technique in his mind. What a great 9 transformations tri-elemental soul refinement technique. This technique is not inferior to the Immortal Stellar Physique. In fact, it's even better. This God-tier technique is amazing. Chu Kuangren knew that at his level of cultivation, there were not many things in this world that could shock him. However, this 9 transformations tri-elemental soul refinement technique was so mysterious that even he could not help but exclaim in admiration. The 9 transformations tri-elemental soul refinement technique was indeed a technique that specialized in cultivating the soul. The 9 transformations referred to the 9 realms of this technique. The 3 realms referred to the cultivation process of this technique. This cultivation technique could allow one to cultivate 3 souls. That's right, 3 souls. The 3 souls were heaven, earth, and human. Cultivating 1 soul into 3? Such a thing was almost unimaginable. However, this technique could be achieved by cultivating 3 souls and then merging them together. After repeating this process 9 times, this technique would be considered complete and the soul would reach the immortal realm. Cultivate. Without another word, Chu Kuangren began to cultivate this technique. His soul energy was now very strong, so he could cultivate it all the way to the 3rd transformation in one go. Very quickly, his soul power began to split apart, transforming into a soul body that looked exactly the same. This was the Earth Soul. Soon, the human soul was also separated. Chu Kuangren sat with his legs crossed. Above his head, the 3 Bodhi souls in the form of the heaven, earth, and human souls looked at each other. Hello. Chu Kuangren's heavenly soul greeted the Earth Soul and human soul. Although this cultivation technique could split a soul into 3, there was only one original soul. That was the heavenly soul. This would also ensure that the 3 souls would not suddenly fight for some reason. It would be awkward if they killed themselves. Hello. The Earth Soul nodded slightly. This feeling is truly marvelous. The human souls looked at the heaven souls, and the Earth souls could not help but click their tongues in wonder. The 3 souls had the same consciousness and memories, but they were also independent of each other. This feeling was too wonderful. I'm talking to myself now. Why do I feel like I have split personality disorder? Tianhun said playfully. Strictly speaking, the 3 of us have the same personality, so it doesn't count as a split personality. The Earth Soul couldn't help but correct him. Alright, that's enough chit-chat. Let's fuse. The human soul said. The man soul and the Earth Soul turned into 2 rays of light and quickly merged into the heaven soul's body, fusing into 1 soul again. The first revolution of the 9 revolutions 3 elements was complete. Chu Kuangren once again activated the 9 transformations 3 elemental soul refinement technique. He then split into 3 souls. Hi, we meet again. The heaven soul greeted. Can you stop being naughty? The Earth Soul rolled its eyes. Aren't I you? The Earth Soul could not refute. I feel like my soul energy has grown a little stronger. The human soul said. Not only in quantity, but the quality has also become purer. The Earth Soul felt its own soul energy and said. Let's fuse. The Earth Soul and the human soul once again fused into the heaven soul. The 3 souls fused into 1, and the 2nd revolution was complete. Then came the 3rd revolution. The 3 souls were formed again. Hello, you guys, cut the crap. Let's fuse. Oh. The 3 souls fused again, and the 3rd revolution was complete. When the 3rd revolution was completed, Chu Kuangren felt that his soul energy had increased a lot. No, it was not only his soul energy, but his perception and understanding of the Tao had also increased. This 9 revolutions 3 elements refinement technique is incredible. Not only can it improve soul energy, but it can also improve one's perception. Wait a minute, does that mean that when I study techniques in the future, there will be 3 of me? Chu Kuangren suddenly thought of something and was speechless. He channeled the soul refinement technique and wanted to proceed to the 4th revolution. However, after half a day, all that was produced was a gray ball of soul fire. That was the soul fire of the Earth Soul. However, there was still a long way to go before it could take shape. Have I reached my limit? Chu Kuangren murmured. He could quickly complete the first 3 revolutions because his soul energy had reached the requirements, but the 4th revolution would not be so easy. In order to refine an Earth Soul, he had to double his current soul power. 3 souls meant 3 times the amount of soul force. Being able to quickly cultivate the first 3 revolutions is already a huge gain. I'll take my time with the fourth revolution, Chu Kuangren said. His soul returned to his physical body and he opened his eyes. His emperor's thought surged and quickly covered the entire Yanwu tribe. From the conversations of the people, he found out that he had spent a month cultivating the 9 revolutions 3 elements refinement technique. Wind Valley had already returned, and they even brought a group of cultivators with them to learn alchemy and equipment crafting. I guess I'll meet them then. Chu Kuangren walked out of his room and found the Yanwu tribe and Wind Valley. Tsang Sage, you're finally out. The Yanwu tribe and Wind Valley greeted him. They did not know if it was an illusion, but Wind Valley felt that although Chu Kuangren still had no cultivation, he seemed to have become more mysterious. Good heavens! It's only been a month and there's already such a change. The sage is indeed a sage. Wind Valley's eyes were filled with respect. Yes, brother Wind Valley, I've heard about the people you've brought. From now on, let them stay in the Yanwu tribe to learn alchemy and equipment crafting. Chu Kuangren smiled. Thank you, sage. After that, Chu Kuangren went to meet the cultivators from Wind Valley. All of these cultivators were the cream of the crop among the humans. If they were to be placed in the afterworld, they would all be top-notch sky prides. Chu Kuangren frowned and said, alchemy and equipment crafting are not as simple as qi refinement. You need to invest a lot of time and effort into it. If you're distracted, you'll only achieve nothing. Hence, this will delay your progress in qi refinement. I hope you'll consider this carefully before you make a decision. Upon hearing that, the cultivators looked at each other and hesitated. Tsang Sage, is there no way to have the best of both worlds? Unless you're an extremely talented person, I suggest that you focus on one path of cultivation. If you feel that you're not suited for qi refinement, you can try out equipment crafting or alchemy, Chu Kuangren said. Looks like I've been too greedy, Wind Valley said. You can't have your cake and eat it too. How can you have everything you want? After all, how many Tsang sages were there in this world? I want to stay here. At that moment, a cultivator said. It was a young, brawny man. His cultivation level was not considered outstanding among the group. In fact, it could even be said that he was at the bottom. He held an iron sword in his hand and looked at Chu Kuangren with an infatuated look in his eyes. He then said seriously, Sage, I want to learn equipment crafting. Chapter 775. Sage, I want to learn how to craft equipment. The young man said to Chu Kuangren. Chu Kuangren looked at the young man and narrowed his eyes. He felt that this man looked familiar. Where had he seen him before? The more he looked at him, the more familiar he felt. What's your name? My name is Scarlet Sunday, Scarlet Sun, Chu Kuangren remembered now. Wasn't this the Scarlet Sun Daoist master, one of the 24 Daoist masters? Was he the one who taught him how to craft equipment? The affairs of the world were too wonderful. He suddenly remembered that his descendant self-sword was still with him. He wondered how it was doing now. It should have been reforged by now. If you want to learn how to craft equipment, then stay. Chu Kuangren smiled gently. Then, some people stayed, while others left. A sage had appeared in the Yanwu tribe. The news spread like wildfire, and countless tribes sent people to investigate. Although only a few of them managed to see Chu Kuangren, the Yanwu tribe's growth was undeniable. The sage's words were confirmed. Time flew by, and a few months had passed. These few months were not long, but the changes that they brought to the Yanwu tribe were unprecedented, comparable to the passage of time. Besides the increase in the number of cultivators, cultivation methods such as alchemy and equipment crafting had greatly improved the cultivation conditions of the cultivators in the tribe. As a result, many human cultivators were attracted to join the tribe. There were 10 major tribes in the Firmament Star. Among them, the strongest was called the Star Slayer tribe. Although the Yanwu tribe was also one of the 10 major tribes, it was the weakest. However, Chu Kuangren's arrival had increased the strength of the Yanwu tribe by leaps and bounds. Vaguely, they were already catching up to the Star Slayer tribe. In the Star Slayer tribe, a middle-aged man sat on a leather chair. The man was tall and sturdy, and his eyes were bright like the stars. This man was the leader of the Star Slayer tribe, Slayer Star. Slayer Star was extraordinary. He was known as the wisest leader in the history of the human race. Under his leadership, the Star Slayer tribe slowly grew from a small tribe of 1,000 people to the leader of the human race today. Hence, Slayer Star was the most legendary human of this era. But strictly speaking, he was only half a human. Because he was the son of a human god. They were the offspring born from the union of man and God. In this land where humans and gods lived together, the union between humans and gods was not that rare. If some gods fancied some human women, they could also take them as their own. In the eyes of many humans, this was an honor. However, due to the difference in physique between humans and gods, it was basically impossible for their union to produce offspring. However, Zhan Xing was an accident. In the long history of the human race, there was only one case of this happening in the history of the gods. It was precisely because of this uniqueness that Zhan Xing had been the center of attention the moment he was born, growing up amidst the expectations of countless people. The gods wanted to use him to control the human race, and the human race saw him as a gift from the gods. They took good care of him and waited for him to grow up to be their master. Zhan Xing did not disappoint them. The bloodline of a god had given him great power, allowing him to easily conquer all the tribes. The bloodline of a human had allowed him to train his qi and cultivate, constantly improving his strength. Not even the gods could do such a thing. Interesting stuff. Zhan Xing was currently holding an elixir and a weapon in his hands. His eyes shone brightly. It said that a sage has appeared in the Yanwu tribe. It looks like that's really the case. Beside him, a muscular man wearing tiger skin said, "Chief, if the Yanwu tribe continues to develop like this, it will definitely become a threat to us in the future. Should we find someone to get rid of that sage?" The muscular man didn't care about the sage. In his eyes, anyone who threatened the chief or threatened his tribe deserved to die. Hearing the muscular man's words, Zhan Xing said indifferently, "There's no need for that for now. However, we can fight for this sage. Send someone with generous gifts to the Yanwu tribe and ask if he's willing to come to our Zhan Star tribe to develop." Not long after, the Zhan Star tribe sent out an emissary. This emissary was very arrogant and didn't care about the development of the Yanwu tribe. In his eyes, although the Yanwu tribe was also one of the 10 major tribes, it was far inferior to the Zhan Star tribe. He walked on the streets of the Yanwu tribe with 2 followers behind him. Looking at the tribesmen dressed in coarse linen clothes around him, his eyes revealed disdain. How can a sage be born in a place like this? He shook his head. People nowadays tend to exaggerate. Just a little bit of merit and they'll be called a sage. How many sages have there been in the human race for so many years? If there really is a sage in this era, it'll be our chief. He's the son of the gods, only then can he bear the title of sage. When the Yanwu tribe guard who was leading the way heard him, he couldn't help but frown with a dissatisfied look on his face. During this period of time, Chu Kuangren's prestige in the tribe had been growing day by day. Of course, they couldn't stand others slandering him. However, the person in front of him was an emissary from the Zhan Star tribe, which was the largest tribe in the human race. Clang clang clang, at that moment, the sound of metal clanking came from somewhere on the street. The Zhan Star emissary frowned and said, "What's that noise? It's so noisy, it's annoying." He walked towards the direction of the sound. All he saw was a brawny man holding a hammer in his hand. He was hammering on a red-hot piece of metal repeatedly. Soon, that piece of metal gradually changed shape and became a long strip. What are they doing? They're refining weapons. the Yanwu tribe guard said. The Zhan Star emissary looked around and noticed that there were several racks with weapons on them. Any one of those weapons was more outstanding than the best weapons in the Zhan Star tribe. There was a sharp glint on them that sent chills down one's spine. There were also strange patterns on them. He gulped, picked up a sword, and injected his spiritual energy into it. A sword ray suddenly shot out from the sword, and with a casual slash, it tore a deep sword mark on the ground. The Zhan Star emissary's pupils shrank. In the past, he would have to use at least 30% of his strength to leave a sword mark like that. However, he did it without using even 1% of his strength just now. This weapon is too amazing. He looked at the weapons on display in front of him as if he was looking at a treasure. Then, he picked up a long sword and tried it. It also had the same effect of increasing his spiritual energy. "What are you doing?" Qi Yang, who was refining weapons, glanced at the Zhan Star emissary. The Zhan Star emissary immediately said respectfully, "Sir, may I ask if this is the so-called refining method?" "That's right." "Are there many refiners like you, sir?" "It's all right. I've only learned it not long ago," Qi Yang said casually. Hearing this, the Zhan Star emissary was dumbfounded. "I've only learned it not long ago, yet I can already create a bunch of divine weapons. What kind of level has the legendary sage who created this refining method reached?" At this moment, the contempt in his heart was swept away, and he felt unprecedented fear towards this sage who he had never met before. If such a person can't be used by the Zhan Star tribe, he will definitely become the tribe's biggest enemy. Chapter 776. After witnessing the wonders of the equipment refinement technique, the Star Slayer envoy was shocked when he saw someone refining pills along the way. He became more and more fearful of Chu Kuangren, whom he had never met before. Soon, he arrived at the tribe's great hall. Here, he met the Yanwu tribe's leader, Yanwu. "Greetings, envoy." "Greetings, tribe leader Yanwu. I'm here to meet the sage of your tribe. Can you introduce me to him?" "Of course." Yanwu nodded. Not long after, Chu Kuangren found out about the Star Slayer envoy. When the Star Slayer envoy saw the skinny young man in front of him, he could not help but be confused. In his mind, the sage who could create the equipment refinement technique and alchemy technique should be a sage-like old man. How could it be a young man? Moreover, he did not sense any traces of qi refinement from Chu Kuangren. Were the techniques of alchemy and equipment refinement created by this person? If not for Yanwu's respectful attitude towards Chu Kuangren, he would have suspected that Chu Kuangren was lying to him. "Are you Tsang sage?" "Greetings, envoy. I'm Tsang, but I'm not worthy of being called a sage. If the equipment refinement technique and alchemy technique were really invented by you, then you're worthy of the title of sage." Yanwu frowned when he heard the Star Slayer envoy's words. "Envoy, what do you mean? The equipment refinement technique and alchemy technique were created by Tsang sage. Are you suspecting something?" The Star Slayer envoy smiled. "Yanwu tribe leader, you misunderstand me. I don't mean to offend you. It's just that Tsang sage's age is really hard to believe. That's why I asked." "Humph, the equipment refinement technique and alchemy technique have never been seen before. There's no doubt that it was created by our young master." Green-robed envoy scoffed. "It's unheard of in the human race, but not necessarily in the celestial race." The Star Slayer envoy said meaningfully. "Envoy, are you trying to say that I'm related to the deities?" Chu Kuangren chuckled. "Ridiculous. Everyone knows that our young master is a god slayer, yet you think he's related to the deities?" Green-robed envoy sneered. "Alright, let's not talk about this anymore. This time, I have come under the orders of my tribe's leader to invite Zhangsheng Xian to work in my Star Slayer tribe." Yanwu frowned slightly. "Good heavens, he's here to snatch my corner. I appreciate Leader Star Slayer's good intentions, but I'm having a good time here, so I won't be going over there to chat. Zhang Shengxian, you should know that the Slayer Star tribe is the strongest tribe of the human race. Only there will you be able to display your talents to your heart's content. Furthermore, you should have heard of the origins of my leader, the Slayer Star tribe. He is the son of the human god, the spokesperson of the god. As long as he speaks, the matter of you killing the god will also be resolved. The Star Slayer envoy said patiently. However, Chu Kuangren did not budge at all. He did not say anything more to the other party either. Instead, he simply said to Yen Wu, clan leader, I still have some matters to attend to. I'll leave the envoy to you. Then, he left with Qing Yi. Zhang, are you really going to be so ungrateful? The Star Slayer emissary said to Chu Kuangren from behind. However, Chu Kuangren had already left without looking back. Emissary, is there anything else? If you don't, then please leave, Yen Wu said indifferently. It would be strange if Chu Kuangren had a good attitude after trying to snatch his corner right in front of him. Yen Wu tribe, you're on your own now. The Star Slayer emissary snorted before he flicked his sleeves and left. Inside the Star Slayer tribe. That's what happened. The Star Slayer emissary recounted his meeting with Chu Kuangren. They actually rejected him? The Star Slayer emissary sat on a chair, his fingers subconsciously tapping on the chair's armrest. He said indifferently, tell me, what do you guys think? What do you guys think? In my opinion, we should just send out our troops. I don't believe that the Yenwu tribe alone can do anything. The muscular man in the tiger pelt said. His body emanated a towering ferocious chi. One look and anyone could tell that he was a man who had experienced hundreds of battles. That's right, it's time for this tribal separatist situation to end. Now that our Star Slayer tribe has a strong army, it's time to swallow up the other tribes, another white-robed man said. When the Star Slayer emissary heard that, he looked at the Yenwu tribe's emissary. You've been to the Yenwu tribe. What's your opinion? The emissary pondered for a moment before he said, alchemy and equipment refinement techniques are not to be underestimated. Moreover, although Zhang is young, if these two techniques were really created by him, he's definitely not someone to be trifled with. In time, the Yenwu tribe will become a huge threat to us. Do you also agree to send out your troops? Yes. The Star Slayer emissary pondered. He was not afraid of the Yenwu tribe. It was just that the Star Slayer tribe's current strength was more than enough to deal with one tribe. However, there were 10 major human tribes. If he were to attack the Yenwu tribe, the other tribes might take the opportunity to attack. After all, the Star Slayer tribe had been growing stronger over the years. It had long agitated the other tribes, making them restless. What are you hesitating about? At that moment, an indifferent voice was heard. Suddenly, a golden pillar of light descended from the sky. A vast divine aura enveloped the entire area. Apart from Star Slayer, everyone else was pressed to the ground by this divine aura and could not move at all. Within the beam of light, a figure gradually appeared. He wore golden armor and held a golden spear in his hand. His stern and cold face exuded a sense of majesty. Greetings, Father. Star Slayer hurriedly stood up and bowed. The person before him was one of the 33 Master Gods, the Vajra Master God. He was also Star Slayer's father. Years ago, when the Vajra Master God traveled the world, he passed by a tribe. In order to entertain him, the tribe sent out the most beautiful woman in the tribe to spend a night with him. Who knew that Star Slayer would be born that night? He was the only human in countless years, the Son of God. In the past decade or so, the Vajra Master God was also very surprised when he learned of Star Slayer's existence. At first, he did not pay much attention to it. However, later on, he realized that Star Slayer contained immense potential. Having divine power and the ability to cultivate was the best weapon for him to conquer the human race. Hence, he had been deliberately nurturing Star Slayer. Yes, Tsang of the Yenwu tribe has killed many gods consecutively. His existence has provoked the authority of the gods, so the gods have decided to grant him and his tribe death. I'll leave this matter to you. The Vajra Master God said. Star Slayer was very powerful. He could be said to be one of the most powerful beings aside from the Master Gods. He could even fight a few rounds with the lower-ranked Master Gods. Sending him to fight Tsang was the common decision of the gods. They wanted to use Star Slayer to see what kind of person Chu Kuangren was. The gods will, huh? I understand now. Star Slayer nodded slightly. Initially, he was worried that the other tribes would take advantage of the situation to attack Yenwu tribe. However, it was the gods who sent him to fight Yenwu tribe. No matter how bold the other tribes were, they would not dare to offend the gods. Soon, news of the Star Slayer tribe receiving the gods' will to fight Yenwu tribe spread throughout the world. Chapter 777. The news of the Star Slayer tribe attacking the Yenwu tribe quickly spread throughout the land, and the Yenwu tribe naturally received the news as well. For a moment, the entire Yenwu tribe was in a state of panic. Even if the Yenwu tribe's strength had increased a lot, the Star Slayer tribe was still the strongest among the 10 tribes. They had a strong army, and no human tribe could compete with them. More importantly, the leader of the Star Slayer tribe was the son of a human deity. In the eyes of the people, he was the representative of the deities. Going against him was almost like going against the deities. Facing the deities, their morale was already weakened by 70 to 80% before they even fought. How could they fight? Leader, what should we do now? Yes, the Star Slayer tribe has more than 10 million warriors, and many of them are cultivators. The Star Slayer himself has divine strength and is invincible. I'm afraid we're no match for them. Yes, I heard that a few years ago, a cultivator went to find the Star Slayer, but he was cut in half by the wind-cutter sword that was given by the deities. He did not even have the strength to fight back. Why don't we surrender? Surrender my ass. I'd rather fight them than be a coward. But they still want to fight even if they know they're going to die. This is called reckless, and it's not worth it to lose your life for nothing. How do you know we can't win if we haven't fought them before? The higher-ups of the Yenwu tribe discussed among themselves. Among them, the number 1 warrior, Tu, was arguing with an old man. One of them wanted to fight, and the other wanted to surrender. Yenwu felt a headache coming on as he watched. I didn't expect this day to come so soon. Yenwu murmured. When he invited Chu Kuangren to join the Yenwu tribe, he already had a premonition that they would one day go against the deities. However, this day came too soon. Moreover, they were not facing the deities, but the Star Slayer tribe, which was also a human. It was obvious that they wanted them to kill each other. Everyone, please calm down. At that moment, a cold voice rang out. A young man in a white cloak walked in. When he spoke, there was a mysterious Daoist fluctuation. Everyone's restless emotions were slowly calmed down. It was Chu Kuangren. Greetings, Sage Tsang. Does the sage have any countermeasures against the Star Slayer tribe? Chu Kuangren chuckled at the crowd's questions. It's not really a response. I'll just deal with whatever comes my way. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other. What kind of response was that? Let's deal with the ever-changing by remaining constant, Chu Kuangren added. With his current strength, he wasn't afraid of any tribesman coming to find trouble with him. In fact, if someone came to find trouble with him, he would be happy to see it happen. It was the perfect time for him to fight and make a name for himself. He was going to be a king in the future. Just the name of a sage was not enough. What he needed was a solid battle record. Only by displaying sufficient strength could he consolidate his current prestige. Xianxian, do you really have the ability to deal with the Star Slayer tribe? Jianghu asked curiously. Rest assured, Patriarch. Chu Kuangren chuckled. He activated his psyche power and activated the illusory 7 emotions song. This cultivation method could manipulate one's emotions. Under his influence, the panic in everyone's eyes gradually disappeared and was replaced by determination. We believe in Sage Tsang. Yes, the Star Slayer tribe will definitely win. The other side. In the God-defying pavilion. Wind Valley, the Star Slayer tribe is going to attack the Yenwu tribe. Go see if Sage Tsang needs any help. The Star Slayer tribe is going to attack Sage Tsang now? We can't just sit back and watch. Yes. Wind Valley nodded solemnly. Star Slayer, is that the son of God? Alright, I'll go check it out. There was no time to lose. Wind Valley immediately headed to the Yenwu tribe. At first, he thought that he would see a depressed tribe. After all, everyone was about to face the strongest of the 10 major tribes, the Star Slayer tribe. It was normal for them to be afraid. However, when he arrived at the Yenwu tribe, he realized that everyone was doing what they were supposed to do. Everything was orderly and thriving. There was no sign of danger at all. Has the Yenwu tribe not received the news? Wind Valley asked curiously. That should not be the case. The news had already spread throughout the land. He grabbed a passing cultivator and asked curiously, Fellow Daoist, do you know that the Star Slayer tribe is going to attack you soon? Of course I do. The news has already spread. The cultivator looked at Wind Valley strangely as if to say, it can't be, it can't be. You don't even know about such a big thing? If that's the case, aren't you afraid? Wind Valley asked again. With Sage Tsang here, what do we have to be afraid of? Besides, what's the use of being afraid? If we were afraid, wouldn't the Star Slayer tribe come to attack us? That's impossible. The sage said that the best way to eliminate fear is to face it. As long as we face it calmly and work together, there's nothing we can't overcome. The cultivator raised his head and puffed out his chest as he spoke in a natural manner. When he mentioned the sage, his eyes unconsciously revealed a look of worship. Wind Valley was a little confused. This cultivator's words made him unable to refute. What did the sage do? Did he brainwash these people? Fear was the most ancient emotion of humans. However, in the face of the Star Slayer tribe's attack, Wind Valley did not see any fear in the eyes of the people from the Yenwu tribe. It was as if they had been blocked by something. Wind Valley found Yenwu. He carefully observed Yenwu and realized that he was not as optimistic as the others about the Star Slayer tribe's attack. Although he did not feel any fear, he could still see the seriousness in his expression. Wind Valley breathed a sigh of relief. Is this how a normal person should react? If even the higher-ups of the Yenwu tribe were so optimistic, Wind Valley wondered if the tribe was finished. Where's Sage Tsang? He's resting in the yard. Alright, I'll wait for him here then. Wind Valley said. In a yard. Under the shade of a tree, Qing Yi was cultivating. Beside her, Chu Kuangren made a deck chair out of tree branches. He lay on it with his eyes closed. These few days, the news of the Star Slayer tribe's attack had caused the people of the Yenwu tribe to panic. Fortunately, Chu Kuangren appeared to calm the people and used the 7 emotions illusory song to control their emotions. That was the reason why they did not cause any trouble. As for the higher-ups of the Yenwu tribe, he did not overdo it with the 7 emotions illusory song. After all, the lower-ranked people of a tribe could maintain a positive and optimistic attitude and even blindly follow others. However, as the higher-ups of the tribe, the leaders had to remain clear-headed and not be too affected. After this incident, it could be said that he had gained a deeper understanding of the application of the illusory 7 emotions song. Soon, he met with Wind Valley. When the other party asked him what help he needed, he only asked the people of the God-defying pavilion to stay put. Now was not the time to expose the human tribe's true strength. Chapter 778. I don't want to admit it, but the Slayer Star is very powerful. It can be said that on this piece of land, other than the over-gods, no other deities, humans, or wild beasts are a match for him. Not only does this person possess divine strength, but he is also proficient in chi refinement. Divine strength aside, his chi refinement strength alone has already reached the level of an upper heavenly honorable. Xianxia, are you sure you can defeat him? Fenrir said solemnly. He glanced at Chu Kuangren. There was still no trace of chi refinement on his opponent. Although mind power was very mysterious, Fenrir still felt a little uncertain. Of course. Chu Kuangren smiled calmly. A Slayer Star was not worthy of his attention. Not long after, the vast army of the Slayer Star tribe was approaching the warrior Flame tribe. From afar, there were soldiers armed with swords and spears, mounted on all kinds of wild beasts, and even people beating drums. The sound of drums was like thunder, shaking the heavens and earth. The might of this army was boundless. Before they even got close to the warrior Flame tribe, their ferocious chi had already engulfed them. The guarding Cheong Chi, Thunder Beast, and other wild beasts could not help but tremble in fear. They had no intention of fighting back. How terrifying! Has the human race developed to this stage? Over the years, with the popularization of cultivation techniques, the human race is no longer as weak as they used to be. I just didn't expect them to develop to this stage. How surprising! The few wild beasts were conversing. Behind them was the Yenwu tribe's army that was also on standby, and the one who stood at the forefront was none other than Chu Kuangren. He looked into the distance and vaguely saw a magnificent golden chariot in front of the Slayer Star tribe. The chariot was pulled by 9 Cheong Chi beasts, and on the chariot sat a mighty man dressed in golden armor. He sat upright on a large chair made of animal skin, holding a large sword in his hand, and his eyes were slightly closed. He sat very steadily, like a statue. Although his eyes were closed, his aura was extremely terrifying. Looks like he's the Slayer Star. Shao AI, analyze it. Chu Kuangren said in his heart. The spirit of omniscience was activated. Information about the Slayer Star kept appearing in his mind. The human god's child. With the combination of the King Kong deity's strength and chi refinement, it's no wonder he's undefeatable. Chu Kuangren chuckled. If Chu Kuangren had not appeared, Zhan Xing would have had a high chance of becoming the leader of the human race. Other than his strength, there was also the fact that he had the support of the deities behind him. Based on that alone, not many people could compete with him. Even the current god-defying pavilion did not have enough power. After a while, the Star Slayer tribe's army arrived in front of the Yenwu tribe. There were at least a few million people. An army of this scale was very rare in this era, not to mention that there were many cultivators among them. The people of the Yenwu tribe gripped their weapons tightly. Those with weaker mental fortitude were so scared that their faces were pale, and their bodies could not help but tremble. Can we really win against such an army? Some of the soldiers' hearts were already wavering. Even Yenwu and Fenrir could not help but wear a solemn expression. Everyone, don't be afraid. We still have Xianxia. A soldier said. Hearing this, everyone looked at the white figure standing at the front. Chu Kuangren had a white cloak draped over his shoulders. His body looked a little frail, but his posture was more imposing than anyone else's. Her posture gave off a reassuring feeling. The sage is indeed a sage. He can still be so calm in the face of an army of this scale. It's as if he doesn't care about them at all. That's right, he's too amazing. Everyone looked at Chu Kuangren's back with admiration in their eyes. The sage's calmness makes us feel more at ease. Yan Wu chuckled. It's just a small scene. Chu Kuangren smiled. Hearing his words, Yan Wu and Fenrir's mouths twitched a few times. Was this considered a small scene? What was a big scene then? The sage was indeed a sage. There was no way they could compare. In fact, Chu Kuangren did not care about the army in front of him at all. Whether it was in terms of size, strength, equipment, or any other aspect, this army was not worth mentioning to him. After seeing the hundreds of millions of soldiers and warships in the extraterrestrial battlefield, this army was no different from playing house to him. The Star Slayer tribe's army stopped in front of the Yenwu tribe. A man rode out on a ferocious beast and said loudly, "We are here on the orders of the deities to attack the Yenwu tribe. However, the deities are merciful. As long as you surrender and hand over the god Slayer Tsang, the deities promise to let you live." His words caused a commotion in the crowd. Yan Wu stood up and said, "Sage Tsang taught us human alchemy and equipment refinement techniques. He also saved the Yenwu tribe's life. We will never hand him over to the deities. If you want to fight, then let's fight. Fight, fight." The Yenwu tribe's army roared. Chu Kuangren preached in the Yenwu tribe, teaching them cultivation techniques, equipment refinement, and alchemy. He also taught them some survival experiences such as smelting, weaving, terraced farming, irrigation, and so on. In the Yenwu tribe, from the cultivators to the commoners, everyone respected him. It could even be said that Chu Kuangren had successfully replaced the deities and become their new faith, asking them to surrender their faith. How was that possible? Stubborn. The person who persuaded them to surrender snorted and walked back to the army. Then, a person walked out from the army. That person was wearing a tiger's skin and had a fierce aura. "Since you refuse to surrender, then die. I am the Star Slayer tribe's Wuxia. Who dares to come out and fight me?" Yan Wu's eyes were solemn. This person is the Star Slayer tribe's #1 warrior, Wuxia. He's strong enough to become an emperor. An emperor was considered an expert no matter what era it was. In the original Yenwu tribe, there was only one emperor, Yan Wu. I'll go and fight him. Beside Yan Wu, Atu, who was wearing a black armor and holding a long spear, said eagerly, "Atu, you've just become an emperor. I'm afraid you're no match for this person." Yan Wu was still worried. Atu, the Yenwu tribe's #1 warrior, had become an emperor under Chu Kuangren's guidance. However, his cultivation level was still far from being comparable to Wuxia, who had been an emperor for many years. "Let him try." Chu Kuangren chuckled. "Ha, even the sage has faith in me." Atu laughed. He took a step forward and arrived in front of Wuxia. The emperor's qi on his body circulated, and a domineering aura erupted. "Someone, tell me your name." Wuxia sneered. "Yenwu tribe's #1 warrior, Atu." Atu said loudly. "Judging by your aura, you must have just broken through to the emperor realm not too long ago. With your strength, you're no match for me." Wuxia sneered as he slashed out with a long saber in his hand. Atu stabbed out with his long spear too. The long sword and long spear clashed. Even though Atu's cultivation level was not as high as Wuxia's, he was still evenly matched with his opponent. "How's this possible?" Wuxia's expression changed. Then, he roared and swung the long sword in his hand, clashing with Atu's long spear. Wuxia's battle technique was brilliant. It did not take long for him to find an opening and slash Atu's body, sending him flying. "Humph, that's all you got?" Wuxia snorted. "Are you tickling me, your grandpa Atu?" At that moment, Atu stood up and said unscathed. Upon seeing this, the soldiers of the Star Slasher tribe widened their eyes. Chapter 779. How can this be? This person took a strike from General Baleful Tiger and is completely fine. This is impossible. Yeah, how did he do it? There's actually such an expert in the Yanwu tribe? The people of the Star Slayer tribe were shocked. Wuxia himself was in disbelief. Then, he thought of something and looked at Atu's armor. This must be the legendary refining method. Unbelievable. He had figured everything out. The opponent was able to block his strike because of the protection of the armor. Also, the opponent's cultivation base was clearly lower than his, but they were evenly matched. It was most likely because of the spear in his hand. This is the sage's method. Atu patted the armor on his body and chuckled. In terms of cultivation base, he was inferior to Wuxia. But in terms of equipment, even 10 Wuxia couldn't compare to him. Let's see how many strikes you can take. Wuxia snorted coldly and once again charged forward with his long blade. Clang, 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 the sound of metal clashing rang out incessantly. The two of them fought until dust flew everywhere. Dao patterns weaved in the air and a powerful aura rippled outwards. Boom! A figure was sent flying while vomiting blood. It was Wuxia. Just now, Atu didn't retreat or evade, forcefully taking a strike from him in exchange for an opening and heavily injuring him. Damn it, damn it! Wuxia was enraged, the baleful chi on his body surged crazily. He was the #1 warrior of the Star Slayer tribe, the strongest person apart from Jianghu, yet he was suppressed by a guy who had just stepped into the Emperor realm not long ago. Moreover, it was in front of his army. Wuxia, stand down. Jianghu, who was sitting on the chariot, said. Chief, I can still fight. Wuxia said hatefully. I said, stand down. Jianghu's tone became colder. Wuxia's heart trembled, not daring to disobey. He looked at Atu unwillingly and returned to the army. Although he didn't want to admit it, he knew that if he continued to fight, he might not be able to gain the upper hand. Chief Jianghu, your tribe's #1 warrior has been defeated. Why? Do you want to come down personally? Atu pointed his spear at Jianghu and said arrogantly. Defeating Wuxia gave him a lot of confidence. Ignorant ant, you're courting death. Jianghu said indifferently. Then, he suddenly opened his eyes and a majestic force instantly gushed out like a tsunami. The strength of this force caused Atu's pupils to constrict. He couldn't block it. He absolutely could not block this power. Even the armor he was wearing didn't give him the slightest sense of security. Was this the power of the strongest tribe leader? It was too terrifying. They weren't even on the same level. I will die. Atu's pupils trembled and he was unable to move. He could only watch as the force was about to land on him. Just when he thought he was going to die, a gentle breeze suddenly blew past him. Miraculously, that overwhelming force actually dissipated completely in front of this gentle breeze. Atu heaved a sigh of relief. His body went limp and he almost collapsed. But at this moment, a hand was placed on his shoulder from behind, supporting him. A cold voice sounded, everyone is watching. If you fall like this, it will be very embarrassing. Zhangsheng Sage. Atu turned around and saw Chu Kuangren's calm face. An unprecedented sense of security suddenly surged into his heart. He knew that Chu Kuangren must have saved him just now. Alright, leave this to me. You can go back first. Chu Kuangren said. Zhangsheng Sage, you must be careful. Alright. Atu turned around and returned to the Yanwu tribe. Now, Chu Kuangren was the only one left to face the million-strong army. Compared to them, he was too insignificant. To be able to block my attack, Zhangsheng Sage lives up to his name. Jianghu said as he sat on the chariot. Then, he said, I've seen the weapon crafting technique that you've invented. To think that it could allow an ordinary emperor to defeat the strongest warrior under my command. It's indeed an impressive technique. Thank you for the compliment. It's a pity that you're an enemy of the gods, so I can't use you. That's why you can't continue to live. But don't worry, I'll make good use of the alchemy and weapon crafting techniques that you've taught me. Heh, you don't have to worry about that. What's wrong? Does Zhangsheng Sage really think that he can block my million-strong elite army? Zhan Xing said. The army behind him seemed to be responding to his words as they roared. Kill, kill, kill. In an instant, the battle cries reverberated through the clouds and shook the earth. Chu Kuangren chuckled. How would I know if I don't try? He took a step forward. In an instant, an extremely terrifying murderous chi roared out and messed up the clouds. The million-strong army felt as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. Everyone looked at Chu Kuangren with fear in their eyes. It was as if they could see countless vengeful spirits and evil spirits on this man's body, which had turned into a scene of Azura purgatory. They had never seen such a murderous chi before. Even if they combined the murderous chi of their millions of people, they would not be able to match up to a tenth of his opponents. It was too terrifying. Just how many people had this man killed? They felt that if there was a god of massacre in this world, then this man before them was definitely worthy of it. You're all too naive to compete with me in terms of murderous chi. Chu Kuangren said calmly. He looked at the million-strong army before him without a trace of emotion in his eyes. It was as if he was looking at millions of weeds. He had killed too many living beings in the extraterrestrial battlefield. Too many to count. Although it was not something to boast about, he dared to say that no one in the firmament star could compare to him in terms of killing. On the battlefield, only the sound of the wind could be heard. The million-strong army was silent as they were suppressed by a single person's murderous chi. One of the soldiers could no longer withstand the terrifying murderous chi and fainted on the spot. Then, the soldiers fell one after another. Even the cultivators could not withstand it. In the end, the only ones who could withstand it were those who were mentally tough and had at least reached the sage realm. As for the others, they had long fallen to the ground. Chu Kuangren stood there without doing anything. All he did was release his murderous chi and it was enough to defeat the million-strong army. The Yanwu tribe members behind him were dumbfounded. Is this Zhangsheng Sage's power? It's too powerful. What a terrifying murderous chi. Did Zhangsheng Sage kill every living being in the firmament star? Otherwise, where did he get this murderous chi from? How is this possible? This must be some kind of power. Just like alchemy, Zhangsheng Sage always surprises us. As the crowd discussed, they looked at the white figure that was not tall but was unusually majestic. Their admiration for him was obvious. Wind Valley, Yanwu tribe, and the others looked at each other. Initially, they were worried that Chu Kuangren would use some method to deal with the Star Slayer tribe. But now, there was only one thought in their minds. This battle was over. Chapter 780. What kind of person is he? Zhan Xing stared at Chu Kuangren with a never-before-seen look of seriousness in his eyes. He clearly did not have any cultivation base, yet his frail body could unleash a murderous aura that could intimidate millions of people. Despite being called a sage, he still had such a murderous aura around him. Allow me to face you in person. Zhan Xing said as he slowly stood up with the golden greatsword in his hand. A majestic surge of Emperor's chi instantly erupted. Hu Sha and the others looked at him with hope in their eyes. Our leader is about to make his move. That's great. I think only our leader can suppress this person. They had full confidence in Zhan Xing. Seeing that Zhan Xing was about to make his move, the people from the Flame Warrior tribe looked grim too. The son of human god is finally going to make his move. Zhan Xing was a legendary name among the humans. Not even the celestial tribe dared to underestimate him. He was the only child born from the union of a human and a celestial in countless years. He was blessed with both divine power and qi refinement. Chu Kuangren looked at him with interest. Let this battle decide who among us is qualified to be the leader of the human tribe. Xianxia yelled and attacked with his sword. With a single slash, a majestic golden sword qi surged. At the same time, Daoist pattern spread from his body and combined with the emperor's qi to form a small world that enveloped Chu Kuangren within. An invisible force of suppression erupted. I don't think anyone below the level of a Daoist master can withstand this attack, Chu Kuangren said as his mind power circulated. When the majestic palm qi reached him, it automatically dissipated. It did not even lift the hem of his shirt. Hu Sha and the others could not help but widen their eyes in shock. How is this mind power possible? Xianxia could not help but be shocked. It was no secret that Chu Kuangren was a member of the Transcendent Tribe. However, the problem was that Xianxia had met the leader of the Transcendent Tribe before, and the leader's mind power was nothing compared to his. Hence, he did not take Chu Kuangren seriously at first. However, the mind power that Chu Kuangren displayed now was many times stronger than the leader of the Transcendent Tribe. They were not on the same level. Your qi refinement level is considered not bad in this era, but it's a shame that it's still too weak. Chu Kuangren shook his head and said. Then, he said, show me your divine power too. Let me see the true power of the Son of God. Xianxia felt an invisible pressure enveloping him. This kind of oppressive feeling, Vajra divine power. With a cold shout, Xianxia's body emitted a golden radiance. Boundless divine might spread out from his body. Divine power, Emperor aura. The two types of energy fused on Xianxia's body, turning into a peerlessly tyrannical energy. Its might was so strong that it shook everything within millions of miles. The entire earth was shaking violently. Even the void was blasted apart. The leader is getting serious. This is power comparable to a sovereign's. Hu Sha and the others stared at Xianxia's back with bright eyes. In all these years, they had rarely seen Xianxia use his divine power. He was almost invincible in qi refinement alone. Meanwhile, the power that erupted from the combination of divine power and qi refinement was comparable to a sovereign. No one in the entire human race could compare to him. Tsang, you're the first person in all these years that forced me to use my full power. To show my respect, I'll use my strongest attack. Are you ready? Xianxia said in a low voice. Come, Chu Kuangren said calmly. Xianxia slowly raised the golden greatsword in his hand. A gust of wind blew. The wind was mixed with golden qi that tore the earth apart. The wind grew stronger and stronger. The golden qi became denser and denser. Gradually, a golden tornado formed around Xianxia, and its terrifying might tore the void apart. Vajra tempest slash. Xianxia's eyes lit up. With a slash of his sword, a golden tornado swept out majestically. Everyone watching the storm grew shocked. The power behind this attack was already comparable to that of a over-god. Across all of firmament, there were practically not many cultivators who could survive this attack. Is that all you've got? Chu Kuangren chuckled. He slowly lifted his finger and gently tapped the void. In an instant, countless Daoist patterns spread out from his fingertips. His mind power surged as well. His mind power and Daoist patterns combined to form a lesser realm, which Xianxia's lesser realm was instantly shattered. The moment the golden tornado was enveloped by the lesser realm, it calmed down and eventually turned into a gentle breeze that blew past Chu Kuangren. Xianxia was dumbfounded. Everyone was dumbfounded too. That's it? That's his strongest attack? Impossible, this is impossible. Xianxia started to doubt his life. Ever since he was born, his power had always been smooth sailing and he had never encountered any setbacks. How could this be? His strongest attack had actually been neutralized by the other party with just a wave of his hand. How was this possible? No, I don't believe it. Zhang Xing's mind exploded. He charged towards Chu Kuangren with the golden greatsword in his hand and slashed at his head. However, his sword was blocked by an invisible barrier when it got close to Chu Kuangren. It stopped in mid-air. Ripples spread out in the void. The combination of divine power and chi refinement can indeed increase your strength by a lot, but that's all it can do. Chu Kuangren said calmly. He slowly pointed a finger, and a strong psychic wave gathered at the tip of his finger. Then, he gently touched the golden sword. Crack, crack, a crisp sound was heard. Cracks appeared on the windcutter greatsword, which was rumored to have been bestowed by the gods. Finally, with a snap, it shattered into pieces. The mind power continued to spread and hit Zhang Xing's body. The golden armor on his body could not escape the fate of being destroyed as well. It exploded and Zhang Xing was sent flying as he spat out a mouthful of blood and crashed into a mountain in the distance, kicking up a huge cloud of dust. He lay in the crater with his armor broken and only a few pieces of rags were left on his body. His hair was messy and messy. This is impossible, Zhang Xing kept mumbling to himself. He could not believe what had just happened. Not only him, but everyone else was the same as well. Zhang Xing was a legendary name. Almost no one in the human race could match up to him. However, in front of Chu Kuangren, he could not resist at all. Zhangsheng Xian, this is too powerful. Can the mind power really be this powerful? Yanwu, Fenrir, and the other strong cultivators who were secretly observing all stared at Chu Kuangren's back with their mouths agape. The Yanwu tribe's army, on the other hand, was extremely excited. Tsang, Tsang, Tsang. They were chanting Chu Kuangren's name with fanatical faith in their eyes. Chu Kuangren patted his cloak and smoothed out his hair. He then looked up at the sky without saying anything. With a surge of his mind power, a violent gust of wind with thousands of mysterious Daoist patterns swept out and shattered the clouds. In an instant, a divine light flashed within the clouds. Chapter 781. Divine light flickered in the clouds. A golden figure appeared, exuding boundless divine might. When everyone saw that figure, their faces changed. Even the cultivators of the reverse god pavilion who were secretly observing couldn't help but look serious. A god, and a sovereign at that. One of the 33 chief gods, the Vajra chief god. As expected, even the gods are paying attention to this battle. They've even sent out master gods. How surprising. How is Sage Tsang going to deal with this? Master gods were the most powerful existences in this world. For countless years, master gods had ruled over the world, and no one had ever dared to defy them. In the distance, on the godly mountain, the over-gods were also paying close attention to Chu Kuangren. There was a light screen in front of them, and it showed the scene of Chu Kuangren facing off against the Vajra master deity. Do you guys think that Tsang can handle the Vajra master god? The Flame Master God said indifferently. No one can resist the power of a Lord God, let alone a human. The Yanwu tribe is destined to perish today. That's right, the dignity of a god cannot be challenged. It's just that I didn't expect this Tsang to be able to defeat Zhang Xing. In the end, he's just a bastard. The sovereigns were all discussing amongst themselves. Very few master gods believed that Tsang was a match for the Vajra master god. Within the Yanwu tribe, the Vajra master deity stared at Chu Kuangren with a cold murderous intent on his stern face. No one can challenge the godly aura and continue living, and you're no exception. Human Tsang, are you ready to die? Sovereign, don't waste words. Make your move. Die. The Vajra overlord gently shook the golden spear in his hand, and the potency of the divine weapon erupted. A ray of golden chi surged towards Chu Kuangren. Just this strike alone was already not weaker than Zhan Xing's full-powered strike from before. Everywhere the strength chi passed, the space would shatter inch by inch. Break! Chu Kuangren gently tapped his finger. The golden energy burst like a bubble in an instant. When the Vajra Master God saw this, his expression froze. Sure enough, the person in front of him was using telekinesis. However, this was the first time he had seen such strong telekinesis. This person was a strong enemy. The Vajra Master God retracted his contempt. Vajra Divine Power, Heart-Shattering Spear. The Vajra Overlord took a step forward and arrived in front of Chu Kuangren. The spear in his hand stabbed out as his divine power and Daoist patterns merged together. That spear was aimed directly at Chu Kuangren's heart. Even a lord-level existence would die from that attack. World Lock. The psyche power combined with the small world and turned into a chain. Just as the spear was about to hit Chu Kuangren's back, it bound the golden spear so that it could not get any closer. Small world energy. He's not a chi refinement cultivator, yet he's able to use chi refinement techniques. There are way too many secrets on this person. The Vajra chief god thought to himself. But she didn't give him a chance to think too much. Chu Kuangren's mind power had already transformed into an invisible giant hand that blasted outwards. Even a lord like Chu Kuangren was sent flying by the terrifying force. Bang, bang, bang. The chief god was sent flying, smashing through one mountain range after another like a cannonball. The sight of it made everyone's hearts palpitate. Azure was actually a match for the main gods. In the mountain range, the Vajra chief god's expression was grim. A crack had appeared on the golden armor on his body. Although it was very slight, that armor was a divine weapon that was born together with him. For countless years, no one had ever been able to break it. Chu Kuangren was the first. What a human anomaly. If I don't kill you today, you'll become a huge problem in the future. The murderous intent in the Vajra chief god's eyes almost solidified. He raised his hand to recall his golden spear. However, that spear was now tightly bound by the world lock. No matter how hard he tried, he could not summon it back. D***M it. He stomped his feet, and the ground almost exploded. In an instant, he shot towards Chu Kuangren like a cannonball. Golden divine power surged around his body, and he emanated an indestructible aura. 10,000 Deity Calamity Fire Lotus. Faced with another attack from the Vajra chief god, Chu Kuangren moved. His mind power surged out like a tidal wave. Over the past few days, he had completely mastered the telekinesis cultivation method that he had obtained from the Divine Sense tribe. With his talent, he had combined it with his ultimate Tao and created a brand new mystery. He named it Rise with a Thought. With a thought. Suddenly, an endless stream of flames emerged from the heavens and earth and converged towards Chu Kuangren, forming into a golden red fire lotus. The fire lotus flew towards the Vajra chief god. The Vajra master god and the fire lotus collided with a loud boom. That tiny fire lotus burst forth with an unimaginable amount of power, sending the Vajra master god flying once more. Not only that, but the golden red flames wrapped around his body, causing the divine power in his body to start burning away. Impossible. These flames are burning my divine power. Myriad deity tribulation fire? Is this specially used to deal with gods? Scatter. The Vajra master god was extremely shocked as he let out a loud roar and dispersed the god power that was attached to his body. Even though he had expended some of his god power, it had also prevented the flames from burning the rest of the god power within his body. With a single thought, 10,000 blades create a disaster of soldiers. Chu Kuangren's calm voice rang out again. His mind power circulated. The spiritual chi between the heavens and earth began to converge. Swords, sabers, weapons, spears, axes, and so on began to materialize from the spiritual chi. The densely packed weapons covered the entire sky. Wherever the weapons pointed, even the master gods could not help but tremble violently. "Go!" Chu Kuangren said softly. Thousands of spiritual soldiers rushed towards the Vajra master god as if they had been summoned. "Adamantine armor, protect me!" The Vajra master god roared as countless Daoist patterns appeared on his golden armor. His divine power gushed out and formed a golden light barrier. The countless weapons collided with the barrier, causing loud explosions. How powerful! I can't believe a human possesses such power. The Vajra master god frantically channeled the divine power within his body and increased the power of his divine companion weapon to its limit to defend against the countless weapons. However, he still felt an unprecedented pressure. This pressure reminded him of a certain existence. For countless years, he had only felt a similar pressure from that existence. Master God, could this human be a match for the Master God? A ridiculous thought popped up in the Vajra Master God's mind. No, that was impossible. How could the lowly human race be mentioned in the same breath as the God King? The Vajra Master God roared in denial of that thought. Crack, crack, at that moment, the golden light barrier began to crack. Cracks began to spread. More and more cracks appeared, and finally, with a loud boom, the golden light barrier shattered. The spiritual weapons also smashed onto the Vajra Master God one after another, and the surrounding ground was also affected by the impact, causing dust to billow everywhere. When the spiritual weapons and the dust settled, the crowd saw a battered and bloodied figure lying in a crater. The golden armor on his body was already broken into dozens of pieces. Everyone felt like they were in a dream when they saw the scene before them. The Over-God has been defeated. Xianxian has won. We've won. We've won. We've won against the Over-God. Chapter 782. For countless years, the deities had always been high and mighty. Especially the Over-Gods. The way everyone saw it, the chief gods were invincible. They had the terrifying power to destroy the world with just a lift of their hand. Although the human race had invented cultivation methods, after so many years of development, even the strongest cultivator was extremely weak in the face of a chief god. However, now, Chu Kuangren had defeated a Over-God right in front of them. Moreover, he was unscathed too. This made the humans extremely excited. It turned out that the deities were not invincible. It turned out that humans could defeat the deities too. We can win. The human race will rise again. We won't be a captive of the deities. We must. As long as we're led by Tsang Sage, we can win. Yinwu, Fenrir, and the others were extremely excited. In the godly mountain. The Over-Gods who were watching the battle could not sit still anymore. I can't believe this Tsang is so powerful. The Over-Gods are no match for him. They were extremely shocked. They felt like their supreme status had been challenged. No, we can't let Tsang live. We must kill him. Everyone, I believe you've all seen this clearly. This Tsang is only strong in his mind power. He's not an immortal like we thought. As long as he's not an immortal, his mind power will have its limits. I don't believe we can't kill him with a few more Over-Gods. That's right, the Over-God's eyes were filled with cold murderous intent. Chu Kuangren's existence had shaken their status. They could not sit back and watch as Chu Kuangren led the human race to greater heights. Yenwu tribe. Chu Kuangren had just defeated the Vajra Over-God. His aura was very stable, and it seemed like he did not expend much energy. Mind power originated from the soul, and with his current soul power, it was not too difficult to defeat a Over-God. Cough cough. Your dead meat. In the crater, the Vajra Over-God slowly climbed up and coughed out 2 mouthfuls of blood. He glared at Chu Kuangren with intense hatred. As a Over-God, this was the first time he was in such a sorry state. "Oh, you're not dead yet. It seems like your divine physique is quite strong. No wonder you're called the Vajra over God." Chu Kuangren chuckled. "Tsang, you don't know the true strength of a deity. Even if you kill me, I won't die. After a few thousand years, I'll be reborn in the godly mountain. This is the true strength of a sovereign." The Vajra master deity sneered. Chu Kuangren was not surprised to hear that. He had seen these things in the records of the later generations. That was why people chose to seal the gods instead of killing them. "It doesn't matter. You guys can resurrect whenever you want, but I'll always be your nightmare," Chu Kuangren said indifferently. He gently raised his hand. Thousands of weapons converged once again. But at this moment, the sky suddenly darkened, and terrifying waves of divine power erupted from afar. Furthermore, every single one of them was on par with the Vajra chief god. "Tsang, you're too naive. Do you think I'm the only god in the Protoss? Do you think that the main gods will just sit back and watch after you display power comparable to a main god? You might be able to defeat me, but can you defeat the combined forces of the main gods?" The Vajra master god roared with laughter as a smug look appeared in his eyes. Chu Kuangren then stepped on his head. "You're very noisy." Bang! Boundless psyche power erupted, and the Vajra chief god's already severely injured head exploded on the spot. A chief god had fallen. A golden prismatic crystal fell out. That was the chief god's godhead. Chu Kuangren picked it up and tossed it into his yin and yang ring. After he killed the Vajra chief god, a terrifying chill suddenly erupted between the heavens and the earth, freezing everything within a radius of tens of thousands of kilometers. The frigid wind swept towards the Yanwu tribe. If this frigid wind were to land in the Yanwu tribe, countless people would die. At this critical moment, Chu Kuangren released his mini-realm and enveloped the entire Yanwu tribe within it. Under the protection of the mini-realm, everyone was spared from the disaster. Boom, boom, the ground shook, thunder rumbled, storms raged, floods surged, and all sorts of natural disasters accompanied by powerful divine power fluctuations appeared one after another. The Yanwu tribe looked exceptionally small in the face of these forces. They all knew that without the protection of Chu Kuangren's mini-realm, any one of these forces would be enough to destroy them. Such terrifying divine power fluctuations, and they're all different. They're all main gods. How many main gods are here? With such a lineup, are the deities going to wipe out the entire human race? Not really. The deities still need to harvest faith energy from the human race, so they won't wipe out the entire human race. I'm afraid these main gods are here to deal with Tsang Sage. With so many main gods, even Tsang Sage won't be able to deal with them. It's not easy for the human race to have a sage who can rival the main gods. Is he going to fall just like that? D****, the continuous heavenly disasters shook the minds of everyone present. In the face of such power, even an Empyrean was very insignificant. They knew that these forces were all here for one person. Chu Kuangren stood between the heavens and the earth. His not-so-tall body was unusually tall in the face of these horrifying natural disasters. His expression was very calm. It was as if he would not budge even if the sky fell and the earth collapsed. Amidst the snowstorm, the first main god arrived. It was a man in a white robe with a cold expression. This person was also the Frost Master God who planted the frost mark on Tsang Sage back then. Behind him, a blue-robed figure walked out from the dark clouds. His body was surrounded by bluish-purple lightning, making him look extremely domineering. It was the Lightning Master God. The raging winds gathered and turned into a woman. It was the Tempest Master God. The flames between the heavens and earth converged and formed into a burly man with a head full of red hair. This person was the Flame Master God. A dazzling white light bloomed in the sky, and on the other side of the white light was an extremely dense darkness. The two stood opposite each other. The Light Master God and the Darkness Master God also walked out. Amidst the quaking ground, a stone pillar suddenly protruded, and on top of that stone pillar stood a majestic figure. It was the Great Master God. Buzz buzz, the void trembled, and a black gate appeared. The gate opened, and a figure in a black robe walked out, surrounded by countless vengeful spirits. This was the Lord of the Underworld. These are all familiar faces. Chu Kuangren chuckled. In the future, he had crossed paths with the myriad deity sect before. Those disciples could activate the power of the deities, so they had created various divine projections of the deities. He had seen every deity here before. This was especially true for the Lord of the Underworld, the Light Master God, and the Darkness Master God. He had met these guys a few times already. Ice Master God, Flame Master God, Tempest Master God. Oh my God! 8 Master Gods. To think that 8 Master Gods have come. My God, this is too scary. Compared to Chu Kuangren's calmness, the cultivators who were watching the battle could not help but gasp. One main god was enough to make people despair. Yet now, 8 main gods had suddenly appeared. It's over. It's really over now. No matter how strong Tsang Sage is, he won't be a match for 8 main gods. The heavens want to end the human race's luck. Chapter 783. The 8 overgods hovered in the air as all sorts of natural disasters circled around them, crazily attacking Chu Kuangren's lesser realm. Everyone thought that Chu Kuangren could not hold on any longer. How was he supposed to fight against 8 overgods? However, the strong cultivators who were secretly observing could not help but gulp as they stared at Chu Kuangren. They were more shocked than the 8 overgods. Tsang can still stabilize his lesser realm under the attack of 8 overgods' divine powers. Isn't his lesser realm a little too sturdy? Could it be that even 8 overgods can't suppress him? The strong cultivators who were secretly observing were all shocked. Meanwhile, the 8 overgods looked at Chu Kuangren with a solemn expression. For a human to be able to force 8 overgods to join forces against him, Tsang, you're truly a legend. The flame overgod said to Tsang. Why waste your breath on him? Let's do it. The frost overgod raised his hand and unleashed his divine power, turning it into a frost chi that froze everything in its path. Let's see who's stronger if we're competing in frost chi. Chu Kuangren chuckled. A surge of frost chi that was no weaker than the frost overgods erupted. With a single thought, 10,000 rivers of frost and snow shall freeze. The frost chi erupted from Chu Kuangren's body. Wherever it went, the void, sand, grass, and even space were all frozen. When the two surges of frost chi collided, it instantly turned the entire place into a world of ice and snow. The surge of frost chi overpowered the frost overgod. A surge of frost chi landed on the frost overgod, causing his entire body to shiver. His face instantly turned pale as if his blood and soul were about to be frozen. He looked at Chu Kuangren in disbelief. How can this be? How can your frost chi be so strong? Freezing with frost. And the one who froze was him, the frost overgod. It was unbelievable, but the truth was right before their eyes. Although they were shocked, they had no choice but to believe it. You used the frost mark to torture me for years. What's wrong? Can't you take this bit of frost chi? Chu Kuangren chuckled. He lifted his palm gently, and his mind power erupted once again. The terrifying frost chi turned into a white flood dragon that charged towards the frost overgod. At that moment, a bolt of lightning exploded. The lightning master god came before the ice master god as a thick purplish-blue thunderbolt blasted apart the frosty aura. Even though his strength was much stronger than the ice master god's, he could not help but let out a solemn expression in the face of this chilling aura. Everyone, don't just stand there, make your move. The lightning master god said coldly. The other sovereigns instantly attacked as well. Then, all sorts of divine powers, such as the winds, the earth, the darkness, and the light, erupted and charged towards Chu Kuangren from all directions. Faced with such power, even a Dao Lord would be instantly killed. Chu Kuangren channeled his mind power to its maximum. The invisible psychokinesis force caused the void around him to distort. With a single thought, all techniques returned to the void. Chu Kuangren let out a soft grunt, and several vortexes appeared around him. Within these vortexes, a large number of Daoist patterns were circulating and intertwining. All of the divine power attacks that entered these vortexes were disintegrated one after another. Rising with a single thought was a mystery that Chu Kuangren had come up with after researching the mind power cultivation technique. It was also an interpretation of his path of self-improvement and invincibility. At this stage, it was divided into 4 moves. 10,000 deities tribulation fire lotus, 10,000 swords creating calamity of weapons, 10,000 rivers misty snow. These 3 techniques were all offensive techniques. Meanwhile, the 4th technique, all techniques return to the void, was a defensive technique. This technique was somewhat similar to the invincible heavenly vortex technique. The only difference was that it did not have a rebounding ability, but its defensive power was much stronger. Countless divine powers were disintegrated one after another when they entered the vortexes that Chu Kuangren had created. They could not hurt him at all. Compared to the deities, his body was extremely fragile. Everyone knew that if they could land a hit on Chu Kuangren, he would definitely die on the spot with his fragile physical body. However, they could not do it. What a powerful defensive technique. The underworld god's expression turned grim. Then, he channeled his divine power and chanted a strange syllable. It was the underworld god's sole divine ability, the underworld god's language. The power of the underworld god's language charged towards Chu Kuangren, directly attacking his soul through his physical body. This attack was so terrifying that it was impossible to defend against it. In the future, Chu Kuangren had experienced this technique twice, but the power of those 2 times was far inferior to the one he was facing now. This time, it was the underworld god's full power. If I didn't come to this era, this underworld god's language might have some effect on me. But now, it's useless. Chu Kuangren stood his ground and allowed the underworld god's language to attack him. Before he came to this era, his soul energy was already extremely powerful because he cultivated the Lotus Sutra. It was no weaker than a Daolord's. After he came to this world, he had consumed 99 soul fruits. In addition to that, he had also cultivated the 9 transformations 3 elemental soul refinement technique. Hence, his soul strength was probably no weaker than a Daolord's. The underworld god's language's attack was completely useless against him. The underworld god noticed this too. He looked at Chu Kuangren in shock. The underworld god's language's useless against him. How can his soul be so powerful? He channeled his divine power again. Suddenly, a black door appeared in the void. Once the door opened, countless Shura evil spirits immediately rushed out, howling. It was another divine ability of the underworld god, the door of the underworld. Heh, it's this stupid door again. Chu Kuangren chuckled. With a single thought, spiritual chi gathered and formed into thousands of weapons. Countless blades swept out like a storm. Everywhere they passed, the Azura evil spirits were completely annihilated. Then, the thousands of weapons landed on the black door. Boom, boom, boom. The entire door was blasted into smithereens by the weapons. With the door of the underworld destroyed, the underworld god's face instantly turned pale. It was obvious that he had suffered some backlash. Raging flame dragon howl. The flame master god made his move. Golden flames burned around his body and transformed into a ferocious fire dragon. The surrounding air felt like it was being set on fire. The fire dragon roared with an earth-shattering aura. Chu Kuangren stood on the spot. With a single thought, the spiritual qi between heaven and earth gathered towards him. Daoist patterns intertwined and formed a golden-red fire lotus. Fighting fire with fire. The golden-red fire lotus landed on the fire dragon. The two flames formed by divine power and mind power clashed with each other. The void was distorted by the extreme heat. In the end, the two flames exploded at the same time. The waves of fire that swept out collided with the Flame Master God's body. The mighty Flame Master God let out a scream from the heat and was pushed back a few hundred meters. A hole was burned through his clothes, revealing a large piece of burnt skin. The Frost Master God was injured by the chilling qi, and the Flame Master God was burned by the flames. Everyone was in disbelief. The Earth Master God and the Windstorm Master God followed suit. However, they could not hurt Chu Kuangren either. Instead, they were injured and pushed back by his powerful mind power. Chu Kuangren had single-handedly suppressed the 8 great overgods. Everyone was dazzled by the elegant demeanor he displayed in his every move. At that moment, the humans seemed to have seen a ray of light. A ray of hope that pierced through the dark night and spanned the ages. There's hope for the humans. In Wind Valley, Yen Wu and the others were overwhelmed with emotions. New. Chapter 784. Chu Kuangren overpowered the 8 overgods. His unparalleled strength shook the entire firmament and land. As the 8 overgods sustained injuries one after another, the other overgods who were watching the battle from afar could no longer sit still. Initially, they thought that the 8 overgods would be more than enough to deal with Chu Kuangren. However, it seemed like they had made the wrong judgment. Chu Kuangren's combat strength was ridiculously strong. We must join in as well. That's right. If this goes on, we might not even be able to kill this person. Our celestial tribe's reputation will be tarnished. If the 8 overgods can't even take down a single human, how are we going to build our reputation in the human race? Rays of light flew out of the godly mountain. In the Yenwu tribe, Chu Kuangren was very proficient in using his mind power. With all kinds of mind power cultivation techniques and his own invincible techniques, he almost single-handedly suppressed the 8 overgods. Countless humans were overwhelmed by the sight of it. At that moment, another powerful surge of divine power came from afar. 12 rays of light had arrived. It's the oceanic deity, the wood deity, the demonic deity, another 12 chief gods. Oh my God, all these chief gods have appeared together just to deal with a single human. This is way too extravagant, isn't it? TSK, this kind of thing has never happened before. Initially, everyone thought that it was just a battle between the Star Slayer tribe and the Yenwu tribe, but things had progressed far beyond their expectations. This was clearly a battle between the celestial tribe and the human race. If Chu Kuangren could win this battle, his reputation in the human race would rise to an unprecedented level. Not only that, but the human race would also realize through this battle that the celestial tribe was not omnipotent and that they could still fail. This would also plant a seed for overthrowing the rule of the celestial tribe. On the other hand, if Chu Kuangren died, the human race would not be able to recover. At that thought, everyone, including the ferocious beasts and beasts in the firmament and land, paid close attention to this battle. The celestial tribe has ruled this land for so many years. It's time to make some changes. Perhaps this Tsang is the key. Tsang. He's a rare talent. I can't believe there's such an anomaly in the human race. Could this human be the next ruler of Firmament Star? Countless strong cultivators in the firmament and land had different thoughts. Outside the Yenwu tribe, following the arrival of the 12 overgods, a terrifying surge of divine power swept towards Chu Kuangren with a majestic aura. 12 plus 8 meant 20 sovereigns. In addition to the slain Vajra master deity, more than half of the master deities in the celestial tribe had been mobilized to deal with Chu Kuangren. Are there any more? Do you want me to give you some time to gather all the sovereigns? Chu Kuangren tugged at the cloak on his body and smiled. Against the 20 most powerful overgods in the world, he behaved extremely casually. He did not feel nervous at all. Hearing his words, the expressions of the gods became extremely ugly. Ever since I was born, this is the first time I've met a heretic like you. If you don't die, my god race won't be able to rest easy. That's right. The human tribe is only fit to be controlled by the gods. Obey and respect the gods. This is the only way for you to survive in this world. The human tribe doesn't need a heretic like you. You must die. The human tribe was born to provide labor and faith to the celestial tribe. Resistance will only result in destruction. Every overgod stared at Chu Kuangren with a murderous intent that almost solidified in their eyes. The atmosphere between the heavens and the earth became extremely tense. The 20 overgods channeled their divine powers and were ready to strike. The vast ripples of divine power shook the entire ground. Countless living beings on the ground prostrated themselves on the ground, shivering in fear. The only way for us to survive? What a joke. The human tribe was born free. We have our own way of survival. It's not up to you gods to tell us what to do. Chu Kuangren said loudly. With the help of his mind power, his voice spread across the entire world, inspiring countless humans. This is your destiny. The underworld god said coldly. Destiny? I'll show you what destiny is. An incredibly powerful and domineering aura suddenly erupted from Chu Kuangren's body. Countless Daoist patterns spread out with him as the center, causing the entire firmament star to tremble. Accompanied by a deafening explosion in the sky, all living beings instinctively felt an indescribable sense of fear. This energy, all the overgods at the scene could not help but narrow their eyes. They could clearly feel the godheads within their bodies trembling slightly. It was as if they were afraid of something. The power of the heavenly Tao. This is the power of the heavenly Tao. The underworld god exclaimed in disbelief. The other overgods were also so scared that their faces turned pale. They trembled as they looked at Chu Kuangren, who had unleashed the power of the heavenly Tao. The power of the heavenly Tao? Why does he have the power of the heavenly Tao? What's going on? The overgods were dumbfounded. The heavenly Tao was the power that maintained the order of the firmament star. It was the collective consciousness of the firmament star and the billions of living beings. Although the gods were born from the innate Taoism, they too would be suppressed by the power of the heavenly Tao. In fact, they were even more suppressed than the other living beings. That was because the heavenly Tao did not like them who were born from the innate Taoism. They lived under the heavenly Tao but were not under its control. You're talking about destiny? Then let's see who's destined. Chu Kuangren said calmly. In his unification Tao state, the combination of the power of the heavenly Tao, his mind power, and his ultimate Taoism was terrifying. With a thought, the 10,000 deities calamity fire lotus. He pointed a finger. The flames of heaven and earth converged and turned into a golden red fire lotus. The fire lotus flew towards the underworld god. Not good. The underworld god channeled his divine power and attacked. A black divine power surged and landed on the fire lotus, but it was easily burned into nothingness. The fire lotus landed on the underworld god's body like a hot knife through butter. With a scream, the underworld god was burned into a piece of charcoal. Retreat! Quickly! One of the overgods yelled. With a thought, 10,000 rivers of snow and ice. A chilly wind descended from the sky with frost and snow. The boundless chill spread out with Chu Kuangren at the center. This chill was too piercingly cold. The overgods wanted to retreat, but they felt as if their bodies were frozen, and their movements became sluggish. With a thought, 10,000 blades of war. Chu Kuangren chuckled. Spiritual qi gathered and thousands of blades swept in all directions. The flame over God, frost over God, tempest over God, and earth over God who were closest to Chu Kuangren were instantly killed by the countless blades. How can it be so terrifying? The overgods were so scared that their souls almost flew out of their bodies. Just when Chu Kuangren was about to follow up with another attack, ripples appeared in the void, and mysterious Daoist patterns appeared one after another. These Daoist patterns made Chu Kuangren's mini-world freeze for a moment. This power, Chu Kuangren squinted. Let's go. An indifferent voice rang out. The other sovereigns, upon hearing this, hurriedly left. Chu Kuangren did not chase after them. Instead, he looked at a mountain not far away and saw a man in a silver-white robe standing there. That man was also a overgod. Chu Kuangren was very familiar with the energy waves that emanated from his body. It was one of the space-time techniques that he specialized in. Overgod of space, Chu Kuangren read out his name with a playful look in his eyes. New. Chapter 785. Xiao AI, Analyze the Spacetime Overgod. Chu Kuangren muttered in his mind, and all sorts of information about the spacetime overgod appeared in his mind. Master, I have good news. The omniscient spirit Xiao AI suddenly said. Oh, tell me about it. According to the analysis, the spacetime overgod's godhead contains powerful spacetime energy. If we use his godhead to activate the river of time, we can succeed even without the Daoist master's energy, Xiao AI said slowly. Chu Kuangren's eyes lit up when he heard that. That's a pleasant surprise. Chu Kuangren looked at the spacetime overgod with a playful gaze. The spacetime overgod shuddered inexplicably. He suddenly felt like he was a rabbit being targeted by a hunter, and an inexplicable sense of danger welled up in his heart. He quickly suppressed this strange feeling. Tsang, your war with the Celestials has just begun. I won't let this go so easily, the spacetime overgod said. His figure flashed and disappeared on the spot. His technique was quite similar to Chu Kuangren's spatial conveyor technique. Running away after saying those words. Interesting. He had no intention of giving chase. He had indeed won this battle, but he had expended a lot of his mind power as well. He might not be able to take it if he continued to fight. Of course, the Celestials might know this too, but they did not dare to continue fighting because they did not know how many more overgods Chu Kuangren could kill before his mind power ran out. Chu Kuangren deactivated his Daoist unification mode. He picked up all the godhoods on the ground. Back at the tribe, Yinwu, Fenrir, Qingyi, and the others walked up to Chu Kuangren. They looked at him with fanatical respect. Zhang Shengxian, you're amazing. Yeah, you managed to chase away so many overgods. You're the only one with such strength since the birth of the human race. Not bad, you're too powerful. Chu Kuangren smiled at the crowd's admiration. As long as you guys work hard, you'll be like me one day. Really? Zhang Shengxian, don't lie to us. That's right. We humans are born weak. Even the cubs of those ferocious beasts are countless times stronger than us when they are born. Can we really become as powerful as you, sage? Everyone looked at Chu Kuangren with hope in their eyes. When Chu Kuangren heard that, he replied solemnly, you're right. We humans are indeed born weak, but it's precisely because we're weak that we're born with nothing. That's why we have everything we have, and why we have unlimited potential for growth. I am very gratified, because you all know that you are very weak, and admitting that you are weak is precisely the prerequisite for us to become strong. We are weak, but we were born to defeat the strong. Gods aren't scary, and being weak isn't scary either. As long as we humans work together and are of one mind, we will eventually stand upright in the heavens and spread the glory of the human race to the earth. Chu Kuangren gave his speech. After witnessing the scene of him killing a deity, no one doubted his words anymore. In addition to that, he secretly used the ethereal 7 emotion song to stir up everyone's emotions. At that moment, everyone's faces were flushed with excitement and longing. Chu Kuangren's words had planted a strong seed in their hearts. All that was left was to be watered in the future, and then it would sprout. Spread the glory of the human race to the earth. Yanwu said loudly. Spread the glory of the human race to the earth. Spread the glory of the human race to the earth. The morale of the entire Yanwu tribe was at an all-time high. Everyone looked at Chu Kuangren. At that moment, their hearts were filled with an incomparably firm belief that they would follow him for the rest of their lives. Chu Kuangren looked at Yanwu and the others and secretly gave himself a thumbs up. It seemed like he had quite the talent for giving speeches. Chu Kuangren returned to his room. He took out the over-god godheads that he had killed this time. There were 6 in total. They were the godheads of the Vajra god, the windstorm god, the flame god, the frost god, the earth god, and the underworld god. The death of 6 overgods was a huge blow to the celestial race. Of course, the overgods would not really die. After a few thousand years, they would be reborn in the godly mountain. That was the most troublesome part. Chu Kuangren used Xiao AI to analyze the godheads in front of him. They all had their corresponding attributes, and the energy they contained was extremely huge. This is a soul attribute. Suddenly, Chu Kuangren's eyes lit up as he held the underworld god's godhead. The underworld god's godhead contained an extremely huge amount of soul energy, which would be a great help to his cultivation of the 9 transformations 3 elemental soul refinement technique. He kept the rest of the godheads. He then began to refine the underworld god's godhead. Although this body did not cultivate, he did not need a physical body to refine soul energy. All he needed was a powerful soul. In the current firmament star, who else could have a soul that was stronger than him? Time passed. It took Chu Kuangren almost a month to refine the underworld god's godhead. The soul flame that represented the earth soul gradually grew stronger under the underworld god's godhead's energy, and finally, it completely condensed into the earth soul. Once the earth soul was formed, Chu Kuangren's soul energy skyrocketed. The earth soul has just been formed, and it's still a distance away from the full completion stage. If only I had another underworld god's godhead. Chu Kuangren's sky soul murmured. The underworld god is dead. I don't know how long it'll take for him to be born again, the earth soul said. There's no hurry. Besides the underworld god's godhead, there are many treasures in this world that can strengthen soul energy. The sky soul chuckled. The sky soul and earth soul returned to his physical body. Chu Kuangren stretched. Roulette, let's spin. Congratulations, host. You've drawn a legendary array master's inheritance. A legendary array master was not bad. He had already taught the humans about alchemy and equipment refining. Now that he was going to teach them about array formations, he wondered if they could learn it. Besides, he was also very proficient in runes. After some thought, Chu Kuangren decided to wait for a while. Going too far was as bad as not going far enough. When he left the room, he habitually used his emperor's thought to scan the Yanwu tribe to see if anything had happened recently. With a glance, he found that there were some unfamiliar guests in the tribe. They were not humans, but wild beasts. Among them were Lust, Ox Demon, Ho, and other wild beasts. Chu Kuangren was curious. What were these wild beasts doing in the Yanwu tribe? He found Yanwu. After a short conversation, Chu Kuangren was very surprised. You're saying that they're here to form an alliance with us? Yes. Yanwu nodded. Not only the wild beasts, but some other tribes also want to form an alliance with us. Now that the Yanwu tribe had defeated the Star Slayer tribe, it had become the strongest tribe of the human tribe. Coupled with Chu Kuangren's powerful combat strength of killing over gods, it was only natural that many people wanted to curry favor with them. "I'll leave this matter to you," Chu Kuangren said calmly. Unknowingly, his tone was already that of a superior. Yanwu did not feel uncomfortable at all. Although he was now the leader of the Yanwu tribe in name, Chu Kuangren had long been the real master of the tribe. He did not have any objections. After all, Chu Kuangren's achievements and strength were many times stronger than his. Yanwu was even considering when to give up his position. New. Chapter 786. Several months had passed since the battle between Chu Kuangren and the Overgod. In these few months, the Yanwu tribe had absorbed the Star Slayer tribe's army and formed alliances with the other tribes. The Yanwu tribe was now the strongest tribe of the human tribe. Under Chu Kuangren's guidance, they had improved tremendously in all aspects. On the other hand, the deities had not made any big moves recently. That battle had made them extremely fearful of Chu Kuangren. In a certain mountain range, Chu Kuangren held a supreme herb in his hand. There were Daoist patterns flowing on the supreme herb, and waves of brilliance flowed. "This 7-star soul herb should be enough for me to upgrade my earth soul to the full success realm," Chu Kuangren murmured as he looked at the supreme herb in his hand. During this period, Chu Kuangren had been searching for opportunities of fortune to strengthen his soul energy. In the ancient world, the spiritual qi was abundant, so there were countless treasures and opportunities of fortune. With his current strength, there was basically nothing in this world that could threaten him. He had gained quite a lot. Now that his earth soul was almost at the full success realm, he believed that he would be able to condense the fourth human soul soon. After refining the supreme herb in his hand, Chu Kuangren's earth soul had reached the full success realm, and his soul energy was comparable to a heavenly soul. He felt that his mind power had reached a new height, and he could cover the entire world with a single thought. He could even see the scenery of the outer realm. Just as he was using his mind power to sense the entire world, he saw a stone wall with a huge finger mark on it. A familiar fluctuation spread out from the finger mark. "This is the Immortal's wall." Chu Kuangren recalled a scene he saw in the River of Time, where the Immortal left a finger mark on the stone wall. He was a little interested. He used the spatial conveyor technique and arrived in front of the stone wall. Because of the Immortal's wall, this stone wall was also named the Immortal's wall. At this moment, there were more than 10 cultivators in front of the Immortal's wall, looking at the finger mark on it, trying to understand its mysteries. However, the Immortal's wall was so mysterious that even a Daoist master would find it difficult to understand it. Not to mention that the people here were just ordinary emperors and heavenly honorables. It was even more difficult for them to understand the mysteries within. Zhangsheng Sage is here. At that moment, a cultivator noticed Chu Kuangren's arrival. By now, Chu Kuangren was known by everyone in the human tribe. When everyone saw him, they immediately stood up to welcome him. "Greetings, Sage Zhang. Xian, you are also here to comprehend this Immortal's wall?" Chu Kuangren chuckled. "Let me have a look." He chuckled and looked at the Immortal's wall. Everyone stood quietly at the side, not wanting to disturb him. "We are unable to comprehend the moves left behind on the Immortal's wall. However, Xian is different. Perhaps, he might really succeed." "Not bad," they looked at Chu Kuangren with hope in their eyes. When Chu Kuangren looked at the Immortal stone rampart, he could not help but spread the 7 emotions illusory netherworld melody that he had learned. The surrounding cultivators narrowed their eyes. This ripple is similar to the one left behind by the Immortals on the stone wall. It can't be. Could it be that Sage Zhang has already comprehended it? I've been studying here for close to 1,000 years without gaining anything. However, the moment the Sage Zhang arrived, I immediately had a reaction. Could this be the difference between us and the sage Tsang? While Chu Kuangren was trying to comprehend the moves left behind on the Immortal's wall, his consciousness was suddenly pulled into a strange space. It was a mountain peak surrounded by clouds and mist. In front of him sat a white-haired old man. The old man noticed his arrival and chuckled. "Little fella from the later generations, we finally meet. Shao AI, analyze this old man in front of you." Chu Kuangren subconsciously called out to Shao AI. As an omniscient spirit, Shao AI had never disappointed him. Information about this old man soon appeared in his mind. Without a doubt, the old man in front of him was the one left behind on the Immortal's wall. He was also an immortal who came to the firmament star a long time ago. He called himself the Ancient Immortal. The one who appeared in front of him now was only a sliver of consciousness left behind by the Ancient Immortal on the Immortal's wall. "Greetings, Immortal." Chu Kuangren calmly bowed. "I wonder if you have anything to say to me, Immortal?" "Nothing much. It's just that I was curious when I sensed that you were in the river of time of the heavenly Tao. That's why I left this sliver of consciousness behind, hoping to meet you." Entering the river of time was not something that anyone could do. Not even an immortal could do it. However, Chu Kuangren, a cultivator who was not even an immortal, had traveled through the river of time from the later generations to this era. That made the Ancient Immortal very curious. He guessed that Chu Kuangren had some kind of big secret on him. That was why he wanted to meet Chu Kuangren. "I see. May I know where you're from, Immortal?" Chu Kuangren nodded and asked curiously. "The Green Emperor Galaxy is not that far from your solar system. It's about 60 to 70,000 light-years away. Why did you come here, Immortal?" "I met an enemy and was severely injured. That's why I came here," the Ancient Immortal said helplessly. Chu Kuangren was speechless. Someone who could injure an immortal must be an immortal as well. Taking advantage of this opportunity to meet the immortal, Chu Kuangren took the opportunity to ask a lot about immortals, broadening his knowledge. The Ancient Immortal answered everything he knew, taking it as a sign of good karma. "Little friend, I've left an immortal technique on this stone wall. How much you can learn from it depends on yourself. If fate allows it, we may meet again in the vast universe." In the end, the Ancient Immortal chuckled and his figure began to dissipate. Chu Kuangren stood up and bowed again. Then, his consciousness returned to his physical body and continued to learn the technique on the stone wall. He had already learned the illusory 7 emotions melody through the 9 scrolls, so it was a walk in the park for him now. Moreover, after learning the technique on the stone wall, his understanding of this immortal technique had become even more complete. "Zhangsheng Sage, have you learned the mysteries of this stone wall?" A cultivator asked curiously when he saw that Chu Kuangren had woken up. "Just a little." Chu Kuangren chuckled. "The sage is indeed a sage. He's really different. We've been trying to learn this technique for so many years without any results, but the sage has it the moment he arrives. Yeah, we can't compete with him." The crowd sighed. Chu Kuangren casually exchanged a few words with them before he returned to the Yanwu tribe. Yanwu, Fenrir, and the others gathered together as if they were discussing something. When they saw Chu Kuangren, they went up to him. "What are you guys talking about?" "Zhangsheng Sage, we're discussing about an alliance." "Oh, haven't you guys finished discussing this? It's not difficult to form an alliance, but we still lack a leader. We've unanimously decided to appoint Zhangsheng Sage as our leader," Yanwu said solemnly. At the side, Fenrir nodded as well. The human tribes have been divided for many years. It's time for this situation to end. If we want to fight against the deities, the human tribe needs to work together and unite. For this, we need a leader who can guide us. And that leader is you, Zhangsheng Sage. New. Chapter 787. That person is you. Chu Kuangren was stunned when he heard that Yan Wu wanted to nominate him as the leader of the human tribe. He then looked at the others. The others looked at him expectantly. He nodded slightly. If that's the case, it would be impolite of me to decline. According to history, he would have become the human king. Therefore, he did not reject it. Everyone smiled when they heard him agree. All right, I'll summon the leaders of the other tribes in a few days so that everyone can witness it, Yan Wu said. That's right. It's time for the human tribe to have a king. Everyone was discussing excitedly. Chu Kuangren, on the other hand, was very calm. Beside him, Green Robe could not help but lament. When Chu Kuangren said that he wanted to be the human king, he believed him. However, he did not expect that Chu Kuangren would become the king in such a short period of time. It was too fast. A few days later, Yan Wu and the others had finished discussing everything. The leaders of the various tribes had no objections to nominating Chu Kuangren as the leader of the human tribe. After all, everyone had witnessed his contributions and strength, so they did not have the ability to object even if they wanted to. This was the biggest event in the history of the human tribe. Hence, after several days of discussion, Yan Wu and the other leaders decided to hold a ceremony at the Emperor Mountain to announce Chu Kuangren as the leader of the human tribe. The Emperor Mountain. This was the place where the first human cultivator became an emperor. Although that emperor had long passed away, the Emperor Mountain was recognized by the heavenly Tao and became the place where most human cultivators could ascend to. This place had a special meaning to the human tribe, so Yan Wu and the others chose this place to announce Chu Kuangren as the leader of the human tribe. Today, the Emperor Mountain was surrounded by countless humans. Almost all the leaders of the human tribes were here. At the peak of the Emperor Mountain, there was an altar. In the past, this altar was used by believers to worship the deities, but today, it was used to worship the heavens and earth. Under the watchful eyes of countless humans, Chu Kuangren slowly walked up to the altar, where a large golden seal was placed on top of it. This large seal was made by Qi Yang using the rarest ores contributed by each tribe, which were then forged by Qi Yang. This seal wasn't a very impressive treasure. It could not even compare to an ordinary emperor weapon. But this was a keepsake. It symbolized the determination of the tribes to elect Chu Kuangren as the human king. Chu Kuangren slowly walked onto the altar and declared loudly, "With the heavens and the earth as my witness, I, Tsang, am now the ruler of the human race. From now on, I will definitely lead the human race to prosperity and development. I will let the glory of the human race shine across the world." With the help of his psyche power, his voice resounded throughout Mount D. Countless humans heard it. They looked at the back of that figure and knew that the human race was about to usher in a brand new era. Boom, boom, suddenly, the clouds in the sky surged. A bluish-purple lightning pillar descended from the sky. Countless Tao patterns interweaved within it, emanating powerful waves of divine power. The gods had made their move. Chu Kuangren could not help but chuckle at that. Using his mind power, he easily shattered the thunderbolt. Today is a good day for the human race. Why? Do you deities want to join in the fun too? Chu Kuangren scoffed. Humph, Tsang, the human race won't last long under your leadership. A cold snort came from the void. Chu Kuangren knew that it was a master god, the lightning master god. Let's wait and see then. By the way, could you please return to the godly mountain and tell them that I'll be paying them a visit in the near future? Chu Kuangren's words were like a huge bomb dropped on the crowd, making them dizzy. The godly mountain was the base camp of the deities. It was the place where the master gods resided. Since ancient times, outsiders were forbidden from entering. This was especially true for humans, who were not even allowed to go near it. However, Chu Kuangren had said that he would be going to the godly mountain soon. They did not think that he was going there just for a visit. Besides, the deities would not welcome him there anyway. There could only be one reason for that. Chu Kuangren was going to the Godly Mountain to pick a fight. No way, no way. Chu Kuangren had just become the ruler of the human race, and he was already going to the Godly Mountain to pick a fight with the deities? This is too much of a rush. They were not ready yet. Above the clouds. Even without the lightning Master God's message, the Master Gods who were observing everything in the dark were already trembling with rage. Arrogant. He's just too arrogant. This Tsang is too lawless. What does he think the Godly Mountain is? Does he think he can just come and go as he pleases? What a joke. That's right. If he dares to come, we'll make sure he never returns. The Master Gods were furious at Chu Kuangren's words. They swore that if Chu Kuangren dared to come to the Godly Mountain, they would kill him at all costs to prevent any future troubles. Humph, I'll wait for your death on the Godly Mountain then. The lightning Master God snorted before he disappeared without a trace. The ceremony continued. Chu Kuangren raised the golden seal that was the size of 2 palms. The heavens and earth shook. Following that, a large number of golden auspicious clouds appeared in the sky. The golden seal was lifted by an invisible force and lifted into the air. Countless golden auspicious clouds surged and entered the golden seal. The seal radiated with a dazzling brilliance as countless Daoist patterns circulated. The crowd could not help but be dumbfounded at this strange sight. When all the golden auspicious clouds were absorbed into the seal, 3 words appeared on the seal. Human Ruler Seal. This is the Human Ruler Seal bestowed by the Heavenly Tao. Even the Heavenly Tao is protecting the human race. This is great. Sage Tsang is indeed the ruler of the human race recognized by the Heavenly Tao. The rise of the human race is unstoppable. Human Ruler, Human Ruler. Greetings, Human Ruler. Yan Wu and his tribesmen were the first to kneel on the ground, followed by the rest of the tribesmen. Greetings, Human Ruler. Not only the humans on the Emperor Mountain, but the firmament humans who were scattered across the land also seemed to have sensed it and knelt towards the Emperor Mountain. Human Ruler. At this moment, the human race had welcomed their ruler. On the Godly Mountain from afar, the Master Gods had also witnessed this phenomenon. Compared to the excited humans, their expressions were a little grim. A name bestowed by the Heavenly Tao, and the power of the Heavenly Tao on Tsang. Could the human race really be the next ruler of the realm? D****. Why did an anomaly like Tsang appear in the human race? Aren't humans supposed to be weak and lowly? The Master Gods were confused. All this while, they had regarded the human race as a labor force and a tool to provide their faith. They had never seen them as opponents. However, this time, they felt a threat from this weak race. It was a threat that was far stronger than the other powerful races in the land. Could it be that the human race could overthrow the rule of the Master Gods? Such a thought appeared in the Master Gods' minds. They quickly shook their heads and cast this ridiculous thought out. How could it be possible? How could the human race overthrow them? It's Tsang. The human race only has Tsang who has the ability to fight against the Master Gods. As long as we kill him, the human race will be nothing but a pile of loose sand. There's nothing to fear. The Master God's killing intent towards Chu Kuangren intensified. Chapter 788. On Mount Emperor. The human ruler seal floated in the air before it slowly floated back into Chu Kuangren's palm. He felt that the seal was different now. Although the material did not change, the energy on it had completely changed. Shao AI, analyze it. Analyzing. The human ruler seal is a heavenly fortune treasure that gathers the power of the heavens and the human race's fortune. It's a weapon exclusive to the human ruler. New information about the human ruler seal flowed into his mind. A smile appeared on Chu Kuangren's face. a weapon exclusive to the human ruler. He did not expect that the ceremony would yield such a result. The heavenly Dao still favored the human race. The human race was indeed the main character of the world. He suspected that even without him, the heavenly Dao would still support others to become human rulers and let them fight against the deities. Chu Kuangren thought for a while and decided not to care anymore. With a thought, the human ruler seal instantly disappeared from his palm and was stored into his soul. The human ruler seal was very mysterious. It was a heavenly fortune treasure. As long as one was a human ruler, they could easily control it without refining it. However, if one was not a human ruler, they would not be able to use it. The ceremony ended. The crowd gradually left Mount Emperor. There were many things to be done from now on. For example, unifying the tribes, migrating the population, and so on. Chu Kuangren handled all of these in an orderly manner. When he discussed with Yen Wu and the others, he could quickly and accurately point out some of their shortcomings and improve on them. For example, the migration of the population. Yen Wu suggested for each tribe to migrate to one tribe so that they could take care of each other. His idea was not bad. However, he neglected the fact that each tribe lived in different places and had different living habits. If everyone were to be gathered together, it would definitely cause conflicts in life and even culture. Chu Kuangren suggested to first send people to each tribe to bring some advanced culture and technology to gradually transform them. When the time came, they would then integrate the population together. When that time came, the era of the tribal structure would end. It would be replaced by a nation. The king is far-sighted. We want to take things one step at a time, but the king thinks 10 steps at a time. He's much better than us. Yeah, who else would be the king if not him? In private, Yen Wu and Fenrir could not help but exclaim. After Chu Kuangren became the king, he did not immediately implement a series of reform policies. Instead, he took things step by step like boiling a frog. After all, in less than a year, weapon refinement and pill refinement alone had caused a huge change in the human race. Continuous changes would only catch people off guard. Fortunately, I was once a sect leader. Otherwise, I might not have been able to handle so many things. Sometimes, Chu Kuangren would lament to himself. In the blink of an eye, several years had passed. Compared to the development of the entire human race, these few years were not even worth mentioning. For some cultivators, it was just a snap of a finger. However, in these few years, Chu Kuangren had raised the standard of living of the commoners at the bottom of the hierarchy by several levels. Now, all over the human race, people were praising his great achievements. King, this is the new population increase of each tribe this year. Yen Wu took out a letter and handed it to Chu Kuangren. Chu Kuangren glanced at it. Not bad. Compared to last year, it has increased by 30%. Is there any pressure on the food supply? Thanks to the rice, potatoes, and other plants discovered by our king, the food reserves of the human race are basically under no pressure anymore. Yen Wu laughed heartily. Okay. Chu Kuangren nodded slightly. In his opinion, the foundation of the human race's continued strength lay in the next generation. As long as the population increased, the number of cultivators would also increase, and the number of strong cultivators would also increase correspondingly. Compared to the other living beings on this land, the human race was slightly weaker. However, they would still give birth. Moreover, it would only take a dozen years for them to mature. Unlike some beasts and ferocious beasts, which took hundreds or thousands of years to gestate, no one knew how long it would take for them to mature. Chu Kuangren looked outside the house. Unknowingly, snow had started to fall from the sky. The whole land was covered in a silvery white color. Chu Kuangren got up and walked out. Looking at the falling snow, he could not help but reach out and grab a snowflake, letting it melt in his palm. Behind him, Qingyi walked up and put a cloak on him. Thank you. Chu Kuangren felt a little warmer after he put on the cloak. He could use his mind power to isolate the chill, but compared to that, he preferred to live like a normal person. He wanted to use his 5 senses to feel the nature of the world. In the past few years, his soul energy had improved a little, but it was a pity that this physical body's talent in chi refinement was extremely poor. Compared to his original body's amazing talent, it was the polar opposite. Therefore, in the past few years, he was too lazy to cultivate chi refinement and focused on his mind power. As for the problem of this physical body's lifespan, he was not worried about it. A few pills would be enough to make him immortal. Chu Kuangren looked at the snowflakes that gradually covered half of the courtyard and smiled. This year's snow is coming especially fast. Auspicious snow foretells a good harvest. I hope there will be a good harvest next year. Definitely, Yen Wu said with a smile. However, after 7 days, the snow did not stop. On the contrary, it was getting heavier. Chu Kuangren looked at the snow outside the house. Beside him, Yen Wu frowned and said, "My king, this snow has been falling for a few days now. Now, there are news of snow disasters everywhere. If this continues, the crops planted by the people will all die. I'm afraid next year will be difficult. Cultivators could not eat or drink. But ordinary people could not. A snow disaster was enough to make it difficult for countless people to make a living. Send out cultivators to various places to help. Also, how's the greenhouse technique that I asked you to teach?" The greenhouse technique was a method that Chu Kuangren used to help the crops survive the snow disasters. It allowed the crops to survive at a suitable temperature. The greenhouse method is indeed effective. However, there are too many crops planted in the various places. We can only protect a portion of them. Furthermore, if this snow continues, I'm afraid that even the greenhouse method won't be able to last for long, Yen Wu said with worry in his eyes. Don't worry, this snow disaster will stop soon. Chu Kuangren said calmly. He stood up and looked into the distance. I've said before that I'll visit them. It seems that they can't wait any longer. This snow disaster is their signal to invite me over. Yen Wu's eyes narrowed slightly. He instantly understood what Chu Kuangren meant. This snow disaster, is it the work of the gods? Isn't controlling the natural changes of the world their specialty? Chu Kuangren said with a chuckle. A cold ray of light shot out from his eyes. Beside him, Yen Wu felt that the temperature around him had dropped by a few degrees. Even an emperor like him could not help but shiver. My king, do you need to inform the God-defying pavilion to arrange for manpower? The God-defying pavilion was the human tribe's powerhouse. Most of the human heavenly honorable realm powerhouses were hidden within it. Naturally, these people were now under Chu Kuangren's command. No need. I'll make a trip myself. Chu Kuangren said calmly. He picked up the cloak beside him and put it on. He then walked towards the door and disappeared into the void after a few steps. Chapter 789. The Godly Mountain was where the deities resided. Here, the deities ruled over everything. 33 palaces stood at the peak of the Godly Mountain, representing the 33 over-gods. The most majestic palace in the middle was surrounded by countless Daoist runes that shrouded it like a protective barrier. Do you guys think that Song will come? An indifferent voice came from one of the white palaces. It was the voice of the God of Light. He will come. Back at Emperor Mountain, he said that he would come. Now that the human race has suffered from this snowstorm, if he doesn't come, the human race will not have enough food to survive next year. As long as he comes, he will die. That's right. This is the Godly Mountain, our home ground. Divine power is abundant here, and no one will be a match for us if we fight here. Not to mention the trap that time and space have set up here. Voices came from the palaces one after another. In the past few years, they had witnessed the development of the human race. In just a few short years, the human race had prospered under Chu Kuangren's leadership. Aside from the common people living in peace and contentment, a large number of cultivators had also emerged. This made them feel fearful. To have such a change in just a few years, what about thousands or tens of thousands of years? It was not an empty promise for the human race to overthrow the deity's rule. He's here. At that moment, an indifferent voice was heard. The over-gods fell silent for a moment. The atmosphere seemed to have become a little tense. Outside the godly mountain, a figure in a white cloak walked out of the void. Chu Kuangren looked at the towering godly mountain that was emanating a vast amount of divine power. A cold glint flashed across his eyes. So this is the godly mountain. It really does emanate a disgusting amount of divine power. Buzz, buzz, ripples began to form in the void. One by one, the deities flew out of the godly mountain. Some controlled the power of ice, some controlled storms, and some were covered in golden light with domineering auras. All kinds of divine powers intertwined with each other. Who are you? How dare you trespass on the godly mountain? A higher god shouted coldly. Tsang, I'm here for the human race, to seek justice. Chu Kuangren said indifferently. Tsang. The moment this name came out, all the gods present couldn't help but narrow their eyes. This name could be said to be like thunder piercing through their ears. Tsang, the leader of the human race, the person who had slain a god. He was the first human in history to slay a master god, and he was an existence that caused the dignity of the gods to fall to the ground. Tsang, he's Tsang. What is he doing here? Nonsense. The gods and the heavens are irreconcilable enemies. He's obviously here to cause trouble. Stop him, don't let him enter the divine mountains. The faces of the gods darkened, and after recovering from their shock, all kinds of divine power burst forth, transforming into a terrifying torrent of divine power that swept out. Trash, get the hell away from me. Chu Kuangren said indifferently. Telekinesis surged out, shattering countless divine powers. Dozens of gods were blasted away by this psychic power and vomited blood. Some of the weaker ones even exploded and died on the spot. To Chu Kuangren, these deities who were below the lord level were no different from small fries. They posed no threat to him at all. In fact, they couldn't even stop his footsteps. The deities were blasted away by the psychic power. Chu Kuangren walked into the divine mountain. Around him, the deities fell to the ground one after another, screaming in agony as their blood stained the ground. How powerful! Is this the combat strength that can kill a master god? That's terrifying. The deities felt an indescribable fear as their scalps went numb. It was too terrifying. It was the first time in many years that they had seen such a terrifying human who could slay gods like they were slaughtering pigs and dogs. Was this still the same human that they saw as ants? Let him come up. A voice came from the peak of the divine mountain. It was the master god's voice. Upon hearing that, the deities no longer dared to stop Chu Kuangren. A wise choice. Chu Kuangren said indifferently. Then, he ignored the deities around him and walked towards the peak of the divine mountain. Every step he took covered a distance of 10,000 meters. Not long after, he arrived at the peak and saw the 33 majestic sacred palaces. He sneered. What a luxurious place to live. Without another word, he lifted his hand and pointed a finger. Telekinesis surged. The flames between the heavens and earth gathered. With a single thought, the myriad deity calamity fire lotus appeared. The tribulation flames shot out and smashed into one of the black sacred palaces. In an instant, terrifying flames erupted and engulfed the entire sacred palace. The darkness master god then dashed out from within. He looked at Chu Kuangren with a grim expression. Lunatic. Don't you want to solve this snowstorm disaster? Why did you attack the moment you appeared? Chu Kuangren glanced at the darkness sacred palace. The sacred palace was burned by the flames, but it was not damaged at all. The material of the sacred palaces was rather special. Was this the place where the master gods resurrected? Chu Kuangren initially wanted to see if he could destroy this divine mountain, but it seemed like he could not do so for now. When he heard what the darkness master god said, he sneered. Don't you guys want to kill me? Then what's there to talk about? Besides, I'm not here to negotiate with you guys. I'm here to slay a god. As soon as he said that, his telekinesis surged again. Humph, how arrogant. Why don't you take a look at where you are? This is the Divine Mountain, our territory. It's not your turn to be arrogant this time. Kill. Powerful divine power erupted from each of the sacred palaces. Then, the Lightning Master God, the Light Master God, the Wood Master God, the Demonic Sea God, and the other Master Gods walked out one by one. All sorts of divine power shrouded Chu Kuangren. Under the Divine Mountain's blessing, their auras were much stronger than they were in other places. Chu Kuangren chuckled as mysterious Daoist patterns circulated around his body. Unification mode, activated. With the blessing of the heavenly Tao and the ultimate Daoist's power, his telekinesis surged out like a torrent and slammed into the surroundings. The Master Gods were shocked when they saw that. He's much stronger than before. How is this possible? How can this human improve so quickly? It's only been a few years, and he's already improved so much. The Master Gods were dumbfounded. Without the blessing of faith, the strength of the gods was fixed, and it was very difficult for them to improve. However, Chu Kuangren had improved so much in just a few years. This shocked them. If all humans were like Chu Kuangren, then it would be a piece of cake for the gods to be overthrown. A main god who is stuck in his own ways. Is that very surprising to you? Chu Kuangren's tone was filled with mockery. To him, innate lifeforms like the gods were too pitiful. They were born with unparalleled strength, but no matter how many years passed, they would never improve without faith. Even if they had faith, once it collapsed, they would immediately return to their original state and be tightly bound. Kill. Divine Demonic Heart Ray. Divine Wood Spike. Great Light Judgment. Great Dark Obliteration. With a single thought, all techniques returned to the void. Against the impact of the divine power, Chu Kuangren unleashed his strongest defensive technique, and a giant whirlpool formed around him. The divine power was devoured by the whirlpool and disintegrated one by one. With a single thought, 10,000 blades created disaster. Chu Kuangren mobilized his mind power and countless spiritual weapons formed. Chapter 790. With a single thought, I shall summon an army of 10,000 blades. Chu Kuangren slowly raised his hand. His mind power erupted, and an endless amount of spiritual qi gathered, turning into spiritual weapons that hovered above the godly mountain. The sovereigns looked extremely grim in the face of the endless amount of spiritual weapons. They even wanted to rush into the temple to hide. At that moment, 8 white light pillars shot up into the sky from the godly mountain. Countless mysterious Daoist patterns enveloped half of the godly mountain. The spatial structure of the surroundings started to change. An energy that Chu Kuangren was very familiar with enveloped him. It's the power of space-time. It's you again. Chu Kuangren looked at a silvery white temple, from which a silvery white figure walked out. It was the space-time over God. Chu Kuangren came to the godly mountain for 2 reasons. The first was to seek justice for the snow disaster, and the second was to find the space-time over God. He had been thinking about the space-time over God ever since they last met. To be more precise, he was thinking about the space-time over God's divinity. That was the key to opening up the river of time. The space-time over God looked at Chu Kuangren with a frown. His opponent's gaze gave him goosebumps. It was the same feeling he had when they first met. It was as if he had become a rabbit that was targeted by a hunter. That made him very, very unhappy. He was the space-time over God, a powerhouse among the 33 sovereigns who was second only to the godly masters. How could he be treated like a rabbit? How could he tolerate that? Song, this enchantment is set up by my divine weapon, the space-time prison. No matter how strong your mind power is, you won't be able to escape. The space-time over God snorted. Then, he roared, Time Seal. The 8 white light pillars around him emitted a dazzling light, and a terrifying energy that could seal time instantly erupted. Everything within the space-time prison fell silent. After casting the time seal, the space-time over God's face turned pale. It was obvious that casting the time seal on a powerhouse like Chu Kuangren had drained a lot of his divine power. How terrifying! Even with the space-time prison's help, casting the time seal on him still drained me of half of my divine power. The space-time over God was in disbelief. Fortunately, his time restriction took effect. As promised, the surrounding sovereigns immediately attacked Chu Kuangren the moment he unleashed his time seal. All kinds of dazzling divine power flashed. The space-time master god breathed a sigh of relief. Everything was over. No one could survive such a situation. Boom, 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 the light of divine power enveloped the entire space-time cage. Boundless divine power filled the cage and exploded one after another. Large swaths of the void exploded one after another. This energy caused the entire divine mountain to shake. Looks of joy appeared on the faces of the chief gods. Great, we've finally killed this guy. No one can offend the dignity of a god, and you are no exception. Song, after you die, the human race is no longer a threat. It's time to make those humans submit. That's right. Release the news that Song is dead. Let all the creatures on this land know the consequences of offending a god. Especially the humans. Let them know that their king is dead. If they want to continue living, they can only submit to us. Otherwise, I don't mind killing half of the human race first. The sovereigns were discussing how to deal with the humans. They had been living such a miserable life for the past few years. They were sovereigns, yet they were suppressed by a mere human. Now that they had finally killed Song, they naturally wanted to vent their frustrations. Some of the sovereigns even suggested that they kill half of the humans first. Kill the humans? Then I guess I'll have to bathe the divine mountain in blood first. An indifferent voice suddenly rang out. The sovereigns who were passionately discussing how to deal with the humans suddenly fell silent like ducks that had been grabbed by the neck. They turned to look at the space-time cage. After that violent divine power attack, the space-time cage was filled with a large amount of divine power, making it impossible to see what was happening inside. However, they had no doubt that in this world, as long as one endured such an attack, no one would be able to survive. Not even the sovereigns. Impossible, impossible, how is he still alive? Space-time, what's going on? The sovereigns looked at the space-time master god who had cast the space-time cage. The space-time master god was also a little confused. That's impossible. My time restriction did work. Did you really hit him? The space-time master god looked at the other sovereigns. Nonsense, do you think so many of us sovereigns missed? The light master god could not help but say. Since the time seal worked, the sovereigns did not miss. Could it be that they were hallucinating? Hallucinating? All the sovereigns stared at the space-time cage with solemn gazes. Boom! A terrifying wave of mind power erupted. The divine power turbulence in the space-time cage was blasted away, revealing a person standing in the air with his black hair fluttering in the wind. It was Chu Kuangren. He was unscathed. The only loss was that half of the cloak on his back had been devoured by the divine power, leaving only half of it. It was not very elegant. Chu Kuangren took out half of the cloak and sighed softly. This cloak was made for me by Qing Yi a few years ago. It has been with me for many years, but I can't believe it's broken today. What are you going to give me as compensation? The sovereigns gulped, their eyes filled with horror. What the f***ck? They had tried their best, but all they managed to do was destroy a cloak. Are you kidding me? Why don't you pay with your lives? Chu Kuangren said calmly as he kept the cloak. A cold murderous intent erupted from his body and instantly filled half of the godly mountain. The godly mountain, which was always warm like spring, suddenly felt like it had fallen into the depths of winter. All the sovereigns were trembling in fear. How can there be such a terrifying human? One of the sovereigns stared at the mountaintop and could not help but say with trembling lips. For countless years, the godly mountain has been sacred and inviolable. But today, it has fallen into an unprecedented situation because of a single human. This is the lord of the human tribe. Tsang. This is too terrifying. Sovereigns, do you have a way to defeat him? In the past, they had never doubted the abilities of the sovereigns. However, Chu Kuangren's strength had shattered their understanding and refreshed their worldview. This even made them doubt the omnipotent sovereigns. At the peak of the godly mountain, the spacetime sovereign looked at Chu Kuangren in shock. Impossible. My time seal worked. How can you be unharmed? This is impossible. Chu Kuangren looked at the spacetime sovereign who was on the verge of losing his composure and said calmly, nothing is impossible. Your spacetime Dao is too weak. At that, the spacetime sovereign was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. He instantly flew into a rage and said furiously, my spacetime Dao is too weak? What kind of joke is this? I'm the spacetime sovereign of this world. I don't know how you broke free from the time seal's control, but you're still trapped in the spacetime prison enchanted world. We still have the upper hand in this aspect. You can only wait for your death. Chu Kuangren could not help but laugh. I've already told you that your spacetime Dao is too weak. Do you think this broken cage can trap me? You're tuning into the UnparalleledSwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.